Hello, Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network listeners. I am Jeff Hawkins, co host of Shake Them Ropes, with a very special announcement. If it's been a while or you've never listened to us before, the original gang is back. Myself and Rob McCarran, back talking wrestling. We have no idea where this show's going to go, where we're going to keep any of the old bits or any of the old things in there. It's going to be a process, it's going to be a journey, and we'd like for you to come along with us. Only on Shake Them Ropes on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jesse Collings, and joining me for the first time, a debutante guest on the show. He is the host of the Good, the Bad, the Hungee podcast. He is also a contributor to the voiceofwrestling.com. A lot of you are probably familiar with his work, especially around the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. He is our Lexington, Kentucky correspondent. It is Fred Morlan. Fred, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I was going to say this for later, but I'll say it now. Whenever I listen to your podcast,
I'm sorry.
um, excellent episode with Dave Meltzer, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's your most recent episode, at least when we're recording this, and I enjoyed it tremendously. It's hearing Dave talk in that kind of setting is such a treat, especially compared to, as I've discussed, his like the way Wrestling Observer Radio is kind of shaken out. Like just like hearing Dave just kind of talk like that is really helpful and
Yeah.
insightful and great.
Yeah. When
Um,
God bless him, but Brian just wants to go to sleep.
well, it is like 2 a.m.
Yeah. I,
West Coast
I I
time.
can't blame him. This is not me blaming him. It's just you can't also control when you record.
Yeah, but whenever I listen to that show, I feel like your voice is Tyler talking, and it takes me a second to realize that. No, no, that's Fred. Fred sounds like that. For whatever
I
reason,
have this.
I connect your
Okay.
voice with Tyler, like Tyler's body, if that makes sense.
What has science done? I have the same thing with You've Got to Be Kidding Me. Like I seriously have to sit down and be like, okay, wait, no, this is Garrett. That's not Garrett. And it's taken me, I'm still struggling with it because I'm very smart. Um,
Yeah, you're relying more on like their mannerisms than their actual voice.
I just like I hear Garrett and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a Liam, and my brain just decided on that, and it's been an uphill battle ever since.
Well, I don't think they do this during the regular season, but during Patriots preseason games, they have both Devin and Jason McCourty in the booth together, like doing color commentary, like it's a three-man booth, and it's
Yeah.
like the play-by-play guy and then the two McCourty brothers, and they legitimately have the exact same voice. And I'm like, whose idea was this? Like, I have no idea which one is talking. It doesn't really matter, but they'll have like a conversation like on air, and it sounds like someone's talking to themselves. It's very strange.
What they should do is have a helium balloon and have one of them, inhale some, but then keep switching back and forth as to who has more recently done the helium.
Yeah. Or do like the witness protection voice.
Speak into one of those like microphones you had when a kid that didn't plug into anything but like reverberated the voice off of whatever was inside it.
Hey, don't be talking about how I record this podcast, Fred. Anyway, Fred's on to talk about the Greatest Wrestler Ever project. This is a project that, if you're not familiar with, it takes place every 10 years. It took place once in 2006, once in 2016, and once in 2026. And I believe there was a vote in 2021, but it wasn't like the full project.
Was it a
Um,
vote? I know Alan Farrell and the VoiceGate guys did something, but I
yeah,
don't know
like
if it
there's
got.
there's like a pseudo list out there, but it's not really official.
Okay.
Um,
I do wish they did it every 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that, but basically, so all this is put together by Pro Wrestling Only, which is a forum site that obviously dates back a long time, so hence the starting in 2006. But basically, it just asks people rank your top 100 wrestlers of all time, and it's really supposed to be geared towards in-ring ability, which I appreciate because that at least allows for some level of consistency in how you can compare talents, even though it's still basically impossible. Um, but to be eligible, a person has to be nominated, and to be nominated, you have to have posted like a nomination or a candidacy, like kind of statement on ProWrestlingOnly.com, which we'll get into kind of how that makes people eligible. But basically, there's a huge list of eligible people to choose from. Um, and anyone can submit it. It is not like a invite only. It is not like the Pro Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame where you have to like get a ballot sent to you. Anyone can vote for this. And my understanding is that this year has seen a huge increase in people voting on it compared to 2016 and 2006. I think um, it was posted earlier today, kind of the introduction and kind of the first few names trickling in, but 88% of respondents had never voted in this before. Um, so it's going to be probably a lot different than it has been in the past. Um, this is the first time I've heard about this project before, but this is the first time I participated in it, and it's the first time you have participated in it as well, Fred.
Correct.
And really, I'll just say like my philosophy for this project was largely just like it wasn't very analytical, it was very vibes based.
Yeah.
And I basically was just like, okay, who are the wrestlers whose matches I enjoy the most? Who's the wrestlers that have the most matches that I really like? With a couple of other aspects sprinkled in, but I really I didn't want to do this for a while. I've heard about the project and I was like, I don't think I can do that. I don't think it's fair to compare like Nick Bockwinkel to like, I don't know, Saray or someone like that. Like
Hmm.
it's just it's they're too different. It's dumb to compare wrestlers like that. But then I thought, I could actually make a podcast out of this or maybe write an article. I could get some content out of this. And as
Consider
soon
the
as I thought about
content.
that, I was like, oh, okay, I'm in. Um, but I tried very hard to not go crazy coming up with this. I figured, you know what, you're never going to get it 100% right. You are never going to be super 100% satisfied with the way your list ultimately shakes out. But let's just go through the exercise, list the names that you feel like have to be on it, do some research, watch some more matches, uh, compare and contrast different guys, and come up with like what you feel like is a fair list. And I'm pretty happy with the way my list came out, with one exception, which is that I just completely forgot about one wrestler that I absolutely would have had on the list. And
Hmm.
somewhere along the exercise process, I completely forgot. Um, and that list is Ricky Choshu. I just completely forgot about
Uh,
Ricky Choshu. And I would probably have him comfortably inside my top 50. And I just
well,
forgot. So, um, I apologize to Ricky Choshu and his family for not including him on this list. I feel like he's probably still going to do pretty well, even without my endorsement, but we'll see. Fred, how did you kind of approach this? Now, I know you're a real psycho.
I am a
And
real
you
psycho.
once told me that you want to make, I think it was the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame voting as fun as doing your taxes.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure
That's
you,
the vibes I bring to things I'm involved
yes.
with.
So I'm sure you didn't do what I did and just kind of vibe based it. I'm sure you had some sort of crazy system that.
I actually didn't. Now when I vote in the FSM 50 each year, I have like I keep a spreadsheet with all my ratings, and then I have a point value system for like, 4 stars is worth 5 points, but 4 1/4 is worth like 8 or whatever the hell complete nonsense I've done. So I have a starting point. I did not do that because I looked at this. I was like, oh God, what have I gotten myself into? And I just like went pure vibes. For the first time in a long time, I felt clean. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just tried to keep it really simple and just kind of went like, all right, do I like this guy or this guy more? And there's some I have huge glaring holes in my knowledge, because as much as I would like to be an expert on like, rings or aughts, Dragon Gate or whatever, I try to keep up with a lot of ongoing modern stuff, and that's kind of a hard balance to swing because I'm already like 20 matches behind on Stardom for the year, at least. And I can either watch those and know what's going on with Stardom this year, at a parachute level at a minimum, or else I can go like poop sock 1988 Saruta or whatever.
Yeah, I think anyone's list is ultimately going to reflect like what they kind of like to watch and where their
Yeah.
interests lie. That's my approach. I thought, you know what, I'm not going to try to be, I can't really like be like egalitarian about this. I need to kind of just kind of go with who I feel like is interesting to me. So, like you said, like you mentioned the shoot stuff, like I'm not that really interested in like Volcan matches, for an example.
Yeah.
And
I've never watched a Volcon match, which I know will cause some people that were like, "Oh, I love the GWE and my shoot style guys. I'm going to click into this podcast." I apologize for the stroke you may have just had. But
to
I
me,
just
it's not like a judgment necessarily on it. It's just like I'm not really interested in it, so I haven't really watched it. So I'm not gonna like, even though I can probably acknowledge that within that realm, Volcan is extremely highly regarded by those fans, and I can be fair about that. It's something that I really can't rank myself with any type of confidence.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and this is a problem that I have because, I've watched like a handful of Manami Toyota matches in my life, like maybe let's literally say five. And like it is very obvious from watching five of her matches that she is excellent at pro wrestling. It just like immediately pops off the screen. The problem I have is I probably watched five of her, if not her five best matches.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's really flawed to be like, all right, I have studied people from 1997. That's actually a project I'm working on right now. And I've watched just their biggest highlight matches. And now I'm going to compare it to, I've basically watched the entire television career of Darby Allin at this point. And
Yeah.
I've seen what he screwed up, and I've seen his high marks and his low marks. And I now am going to try to compare that not only to someone from 30 years ago, but someone from 30 years ago that I've only purposefully sought out their very best work.
Yeah, and that's really important too, is especially comparing it to someone you've watched in real time with your level of analytical approach that you have now,
Mm.
where you can be like, wow, well, I was writing about Darby Allin every week, and I have his matches in all these spreadsheets that I watched in real time, and
Yeah.
compared to anyone in the past, like I say this as someone that ranked him third in my top 100, so obviously I think extremely highly of this individual, despite not watching him in real time. But Jumbo Tsuruta, like I think like Jumbo Tsuruta, oh yeah, awesome, like legendary wrestler. Like who's better than Jumbo Tsuruta? Not many, according to me, because he's my third
Yeah.
ranked wrestler of all time. But actually, throughout portions of Jumbo Ceruta's career, he was actually considered kind of overrated and unexciting by certain elements of the fan
Hmm.
sphere. In that, especially in the early '80s, it was thought of that he was kind of wrestling kind of like an outdated style, and wrestlers like Riki Choshu and Genichiro Tenryu were like pushing the envelope more. And Jumbo kind of had to adapt to what they were doing in order to kind of keep up.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of lost on the average person who's like, oh, let me type in Jumbo Tsuruta, and you're watching like Tsuruta versus Misawa or something like that. And you're like, oh, so great. But um, it's if you were like watching Jumbo Tsuruta in real time, you'd be like, actually, there were years where this guy was really disappointing. And that kind of washes away, 40 years after the fact. But if you were watching
Yeah.
real time, you'd see that. And I use that as an example because in, 40 years, we might be having this conversation about some other wrestlers that,
Oh, like MJF would be the perfect example right
yeah,
now. I mean, because we're barely into his career, and I know, when we do the 30 under 30 list, I know some people that like will not vote would not vote for MJF when he was eligible. He no longer is because they hated his style and hated how he worked, and they hate like some people could not forgive him for the Brochacho stuff. And as someone that covered the Bruchacho stuff in real time. I can't blame them, but there's going to be people that are born in like 20 years, assuming we're not all dead or whatever, that, are like, all right, it's 2066. I'm going to vote on the GWE project this year. I need to look up this MGF feller and see what he was doing. And they're not going to like probably spend a lot of time on like these Adam Cole segments that sucked so much.
yeah, you're gonna type in like the top five MJF matches of all time,
Yeah.
like you do with Manami Toyota, right? And you're
Right.
gonna see
Exactly.
like the strap match with Punk or the
Yeah.
60-minute match with Bryan Danielson. And you're like, this guy's the greatest wrestler of all time. Um, but obviously, yeah, you're not seeing any of that stuff, and that's
Yeah.
kind of like is kind of an overall indicator of like the kind of futileness of actually like trying to make a definitive list. You just gotta approach it be like, I'm just gonna do a list that's fun and has my kind of personality in it.
Yeah.
Um, and I also wanted to make sure that like I want to contribute to the project in small parts because this has historically been kind of not that many people participated in it relative to this year. So I'm sure the results will be very different, especially originating from the pro wrestling only boards where there's a
Yeah.
very kind of unique and specific uh, general kind of consensus around certain talents.
Yeah,
And
I don't want to say, like I don't mean this negatively, but I can't think of a better term for it. But there is kind of like a hive mind as far as like, there's a certain kind of wrestling that's good, and there's also a certain kind of wrestling that is, if not bad, then overrated. And like they're very pro shoot style and very pro Jerry Lawler dropping the straps. Um,
I'm
and
not gonna
like
lie, I'm not gonna lie, Fred. I participated in part because I'm like, I don't want William Regal to finish in the top 25.
Yeah. Look, okay, I got to talk about this because I am in my early 40s, and I really started watching wrestling during the Monday Night Wars, and I saw a good number of Fit Finlay and William Regal matches, and I think they had some really cool ideas of what to do in the ring. But in my mind, if you're a great wrestler, you should have great matches. Yeah, that may be like the dumbest way to think of it, but that's just how my brain works. Is like if you're not having matches that I think are really exciting and really good or interesting and engaging on a high level or any level, then you're really not that good of a wrestler, or
Ooh,
at least
this
not a
is
great
yeah, this is
wrestler.
like the Randy Orton conundrum,
Yeah,
where
and
like
like I could hear people be like, "Oh, Regal has some really cool ideas of how to work." I'm like, yes, and he also has a career littered with like 3.25 star matches, and part of that is going to be the time period his peak was in and everything. But yeah, I just I've always appreciated Regal. I've always enjoyed. I've always thought he was great out of the ring, and I've always thought he was pretty fun in the ring. But I just watched Hiroshi Hase's debut in All Japan after he made that jump, which is basically like a extended kind of squash of some poor sucker who got the shit pissed, beat out of him. And the match has a fantastic spot where Hase basically no sells a springboard drop kick. This kind of junior guy did to him. Immediately grabs the junior's leg and then does a as good as any Claudio giant swing you've ever seen, like for 41 seconds. I actually timed it. And it rocked. I was both hooting and hollering. But at the end of the day, it was like a 2.25 star match because it just wasn't competitive and wasn't that great. And like, if you were to ask me, do I think Hiroshi Hase is a great wrestler? Get off this one match. I think I may have watched one other match of his years ago. And it's like, well, I can't say that. I could say I've been entertained by the little bit I've seen of him, but I definitely don't know enough to like quantify him as one of the 100 greatest of all time. And like with Regal, I saw more of his career, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, he was good. I can't say really that I ever thought he was more than that.
yeah, with
Never thought
like
he was
Regal,
great.
I'm not gonna get like I can't get that too like philosophical about like this is how he worked and he did this and he did
Yeah.
that and like all that kind of stuff. I think there is some appeal that stems back from like a time period where we didn't get a lot of high quality in-ring work on like national television
Oh yeah,
wrestling,
yeah,
especially in the United States. And if you weren't watching, Puro in the 90s, like you're watching WCW or WWF, like how many like outside of the cruiserweights, so like talking like a more traditional heavyweight style, like how many like actually good workers were there, especially in WCW at the time?
yeah.
Like,
It's I mean, there was I just watched like a 3-minute Goldberg Scott Norton match that was kind of great because they just slammed into each other like action figures. But I certainly wouldn't call Goldberg great in general. Great at what he did, sure, but as a great worker, yeah,
right.
probably not. And
So in real time, if you're looking at like a a William Regal or like another guy who these people love, like Dustin Rhodes,
yeah,
like, and you're seeing like just like a level of effort and professionalism, even if the like we're not in 30 years talking about the legendary match that that Lord Steven Regal had on Nitro in November 12th, 1996 or whatever.
right.
Like, um, they stand out in real time. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there that like I'm sure people would be better at talking about in terms of why they think he's so great. But I wanted to I'm not gonna lie and say part of me didn't want to participate in this because I felt like I needed to put my correct list out there to correct many incorrect lists, which I'm sure is many people's motivation to do this. I'm sure not alone. And it's like, whoa, some of these lists are bad. I gotta make one that's better, and that's kind of how it went.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to. I thought it was fun. I like making lists in the first place. I've joked many times in the VOW Discord that making lists make my brain release the good chemicals. So I enjoyed doing that. And I just thought that might as well share my dopey opinions if other people are sharing theirs. I would like to think I don't have the worst list. That's kind of my goal. Um, because I was freaking out. I messaged Alan Forel multiple times, like I don't know if I'm qualified for this, Alan. I just don't know if I've watched enough of stuff historically. And Alan Forel is basically the nicest person on the planet, and was just like, "Ah, Fred, it's fine. extremely British noises. You could give your list. It's fine. You
Al
know a
Alan
lot.
is not British.
Oh, that's right. He is British adjacent. I'm going to mess up the Scottish Irish thing and just get myself in further hot
He's
water.
from Ireland. Okay, get that right,
Okay.
Fred, on my
Okay.
podcast.
All right.
Um,
So,
I
so
got your back, Alan.
Irishman.
Don't worry. He's 100% listening to this too.
He definitely is, and then I'll get shot, because that's what happens. Yeah, like I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do my best, and this is a fun little exercise, and I've moved on. Outside of this podcast, of course.
Having seen some other lists, Fred, I feel very confident you're qualified
Yeah,
to make this list.
we talked about this pre-show, and then I was like, oh, we should probably put this on the actual show. But in general, when it comes to looking at other lists of this, like, I'm not gonna get really mad. Someone's like, "Ah, George Steele is the 100 greatest wrestler of all time." Like, no, not really,
Yeah,
But
not for me. Yeah.
at the same time, like, yeah, go with God, have fun. But the only thing that really makes me angry, is when I see stuff like I'm voting for Andreza Giant Panda and Ken the Box, and I'm like, that's no, stop.
So I want to touch on this. This is kind of the process this is my experience with it. So there is a list of nominations. And to nominate a wrestler, as I said earlier, you need to post on the Pro Wrestling Only forum and you basically like, here's my nomination. Here's this wrestler. I really enjoy them for X, Y, and Z. And you need to be able to provide, I guess, three matches that people could watch. So it in some ways disqualifies talent that does we don't have a lot of like tape of, like especially older wrestlers. Like we don't have full matches of a lot of these people, so they kind of
Yeah,
don't show up on the list. Um, so that's part of it. And I originally saw the list of nominees like a month ago,
yeah,
and I think it was actually Alan Farrell who told me this, and he's like, here's the list, but like, don't really worry about it because like everyone is on the list, and you scroll through the list and it's in alphabetical order, and I'm like, oh, I see A Kid is on here. I'm like, okay, I see Alexa Bliss is on here. I see, Alex Wright, like all these people. And I was like, all right, so like anyone that I conceivably would want to have on my list is on here because there's so many nominees, right?
yeah, right.
And that's just kind of approach to it. Now, fortunately. Despite I didn't really consult with the nominee list, I believe I went 100 for 100 in terms of the wrestlers I put were all nominated, so all my votes will count. Because my understanding is
Yeah,
that,
I think I did too.
yeah. So I feel good about that. But in my impression was like, oh, the only people that aren't going to be nominated are like really obscure wrestlers that like no one would ever have on their list. And then I saw they announced as we're recording this, there's some of the results are out, right? Which is where they announced basically all of the wrestlers who got one vote or two votes. So like we're like in like the 800s and 700s, and we're eventually going to make all our way all the way down to one.
Hmm.
And this is happening on the Pro Wrestling Only forum. Um, and at the top, it says the list of all these wrestlers who people voted for that were actually not nominated. And there's like I don't know, like over 100 of these people who weren't nominated, and they aren't like the most obscure people you've never heard of before. Like I was talking about this earlier online, and I was like, like Taz wasn't nominated. Lance Storm wasn't nominated. Natsupoi wasn't nominated. Um, like wrestlers who like I think would be they didn't end up on my list, but I think would considerably be like consider for a spot in the top 100 on not just my list, but many people's lists. You know, um, Interesting enough, Bray Wyatt was never nominated. Um, you know, Bobby Lashley, um, Devon Dudley. Like, what if you love the Dudley Boys? Why don't you put them on there? Um, like you just go through the list. It's like there's actually some pretty like prominent people like El Hijo del Vikingo. I might have put Hijo del Vikingo on my list. It's a little too early
Yeah.
in his
If
career.
he had more like 2021 years,
Yeah, but I'm like
yeah.
these aren't like the world's most obscure people. These are people that like might actually make people's lists. Joey Janela. Um, like I'm just going through this. There's a lot. Kyle Fletcher. Like just all these people. So it wasn't as obscure as I thought it was. Which like as I said earlier, it's like okay because I actually got out unscathed. But then when I saw like oh like Andreza the Giant Panda got votes and she was nominated or it was nominated, And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's kind of stupid now that like Andres the
Yeah.
Giant Panda is gets votes in places on the list because someone nominated them in the forum, but like no one nominated specifically like Taz or Lance Storm, and they're not placed on the list because they didn't get this nomination process. I don't really understand the point of the nomination process as much as, and Alan was kind of explaining to this where he basically said like if you feel like you want to vote for like an obscure wrestler, you should nominate them because, to make sure that you can vote for them because you don't think because you assume no one else is going to nominate for them. And so if there's
Yeah.
someone like a Lance Storm, it's like, oh, I don't have to make the case for Lance Storm, so I'll just put him on my list. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, Lance Storm's vote isn't counting. I'm not saying Lance Storm
I
has to be on anyone's top 100 list because he wasn't on mine.
No, he wasn't mine either. But yeah, I understand. I just threw a little grenade in the Discord. The problem with the nomination process is if you aren't like you don't have a 10-year-old PWO account, then your application for a new account, you're fortunate if that gets looked at in like 3 months. And so that can kind of completely throws a wrench in the whole the nomination process works if you can't allow people to get on there to nominate people. And I also saw at some point of this, the guy I thought Grimace said this. I think that's the guy that's running
Yeah,
it. Said that nominations really wouldn't be required, and now we've gone the other way. I don't understand that at all, but whatever.
and it's just like I don't really understand the process because, like I said, I feel like it left people who got votes out.
Yeah,
Like
and
some of these people could have finished like high.
yeah, I understand like wanting to have a filter thing, but I don't think this really works as a filter thing when you have like Andre's a giant panda or there was someone that like last time around was nominating Southern indie guys that like you would not have heard of. Basically, like they didn't really achieve any prominence outside of like very southern,
Yeah.
smallish indies like NWA, like maybe even sub NWA Wildside stuff. They're like, he throws good punches. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, and look, here's the thing. I like I understand this is a long time project, and people have said like, the nomination process is part of the exercise, right? You have to go out, you have to make the case for why you think someone should be nominated, you have to provide the links to the matches, all that kind of stuff. It's part of the conversation. And I understand like me, Jesse Collings, who's not really a pro wrestling only user, like parachuting in and being like, I don't understand this system, it's
yeah,
stupid. Like it's like that's like, a lot of those people are going to be like, well, fuck you, dude. You're just
yeah,
parachuting in and
sure.
voting. So, like,
And
I totally
I'm not
understand
really
that.
trying to I'm not really trying to be that either,
Yeah.
but I think if you're gonna like everyone can be involved in this, then you're not, then you should expect everyone to also be like, is this working? We sure about this?
Right. And then when we get to and then so a couple of things like Muhammad Ali got ranked
Yeah.
on this. So, like, Muhammad Ali, who me and you, Fred, both seem to think he only has actually one wrestling match,
As
which
far as
is not a wrestling match, right?
Now, here's the funny part is he was nominated 2 years ago by Grimace, who listed three matches. Now I can't say that I've really dug into Muhammad Ali's pro wrestling career because I'm aware of the Inoki thing, and it sounds like the watching paint dry.
That's
Wild
not a
guy.
wrestling match, though. That was a shoot fight.
Yeah, but it's listed on here as part of it. And then there's also matches apparently with Buddy Wolf and Kenny J, neither of which make his wiki page at least. So I don't know anything about those, but I mean, it just the nomination itself is like, this obviously not a serious candidate, but I think he should be nominated so he can be considered for a 100/99 shout out spot. And like, okay, cool,
But to me, it's like ridiculous. Like Muhammad Ali got ranked in all of
yeah,
these very legitimate, like I said, over 100 of these, very legitimate wrestlers, whether you like them or not, can't get ranked because they weren't part of the nomination process. Um, and then there was this other weird thing where it was like, so you need to have at least three matches that like are available on tape, which disqualifies a lot of like older wrestlers. Like
hmm
for instance, Frank Gotch was disqualified. He wasn't nominated. And like there's, to my knowledge, no tape of full Frank Gotch matches because he wrestled in like 1910.
yeah,
Um this is probably even more the case for like a guy like Santo who doesn't have a lot of matches. You could probably scrape together three Santo matches on tape, I assume. if you tried, just because his career was so long. You think you'd get like handhelds and stuff like that, but
And if you're counting the movies, footage used in the
yeah, hell
movies.
yeah.
By the way,
Hey, look, if
apologies.
we're counting Muhammad Ali having a shoot fight as a match, why can't we
Yeah,
like did El
like
Santo have matches in his movies? He probably did, right?
here's one. Like Frank Shamrock is in the 800s of voting. Like
Mhm.
he actually got votes, and the nomination is like, it's admittedly an unorthodox one because he's only had one traditional pro wrestling match. I mean, like, okay, then what are we doing?
Yeah.
Either we're.
Well, I saw this tape, and then so like I'm like, okay, so Frank Gotch isn't on here. Ed Lewis isn't on here. Strangler Ed Lewis isn't on
Mhm.
here. Some really incredible, like huge legends of pro wrestling. And I'm like, oh well, they're not on. Part of it is like I don't even know how you would begin to grade their work watching them into today. But
Yeah, talk about the difficulties of like 90s shoot style or
yeah,
80s Memphis or whatever versus modern stuff. And
and this other, but then I saw like Gus Sonnenberg was nominated, so he's on here, and I'm like, Gus Sonnenberg, like there's no way he can have three matches available because he was wrestling in the 1920s and he didn't have a very long career, and like so I was like, so Gus Sonnenberg got nominated, so he can get votes, but like Ed Lewis, who's a much bigger star, presumably a better wrestler, certainly his reputation was like in his time was that he was like the greatest wrestler, and Gus Sonnenberg was like a joke to wrestlers in the industry at least. Um, and they wrestled around the same time period, and it's like, all right, it's very inconsistent, and that's not basically all I want to say. But
yeah, like, and apologies, my yard guy, of course, has shown up right now, so that's how it's going to go. But I mean, like, yeah, like if we're going to do this, then we should at least have like reasonable rules that are followed and adhered to, and that makes sense. But
yeah, and I'm sure like when we get to the actual top 100, it will be like 100 like respectable
good
wrestlers for
names,
the
yeah.
most
It's
part.
not going
Yeah.
to be a crappy list. We're not going to agree with everything, but we're going to be all right with it.
Number three is like just like a completely obscure wrestler that no one's ever heard of before.
Madman Pondo, which is, I'm not saying it's obscure, but it would be funny to have
Yeah,
as
I
number
know. I was
three.
trying to think of like who would be like a funny person to put on here. Um, anyway, Fred, I've been looking at your list, and you have Brian
Which
Danielson.
is
You have
perfect, of course.
you have Brian Danielson at number one. Um, this is gonna sound like a silly question, but I think it's helpful for the exercise. How did you come to that conclusion? And what is it about Brian Danielson that made you feel confident to put him at number one?
So to break down my fandom real quick, I guess. Watched when I was a kid, but obviously I was like a kid, right? So, 7 to 15-year-old me doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, or watching or anything. Not that it's improved much since then. But I'm watching like 90s WCW, WWF, and I think I have the vaguest idea that there's wrestling in other places, but I don't know what's going on outside of like what may be listed in the back of a PWI. I don't know about Dave Meltzer. I don't know about star ratings or anything. But I figure out that my favorite is Owen Hart. Then Owen Hart dies. So I after shockingly that did not have a positive effect on my watching wrestling. So I drop out for a few years, and I follow it through the aughts, but I don't really watch much. I watch a little bit here and there, but not much. And then 2013, I think it is. My wife's flipping through channels because that was the thing we still did back then, when we wore onions on our belts. And she's like, "Oh, The Rock's on TV, Fred." And I'm like, "Oh, I have not watched wrestling in quite a while. I guess I will see what The Rock is up to." And he's doing like a kind of decent promo, but it's also like, this is not 1998 kind of promo, but it's kind of is. And then they're like, next we'll have Brian or Daniel Bryan, of course, because it's WWE, in a match. I'm like, damn, I've heard this guy's awesome. I gotta see what he's like. Like actually sit down and watch a real Daniel, Brian Danielson match, which I'm sure that several people in VOW are yelling at their podcasts right now because that's not what real Brian Danielson's like. I know. Well, he puts on what for WWE is like a damn good match. I'm like, oh shit, this kind of rocks. And so I get sucked back into wrestling for the Mania 30 build and all that. And I still think that's like a creative high watermark for the company is just really very accidentally, but very well done pro wrestling. And then, he faces Kane as his first title defense, stuff like, oh, collar tug. As the network, and I'm able to watch a little bit of older stuff, and I'm also working on my doctorate, so, And then I just like I hear, oh, this New Japan company is doing
What
really
a
cool
humble
stuff with
brag, just talking about working on a doctorate, like in the middle of
it's
all.
look, I don't use it, so I finished it and had awful test anxiety. But yeah, I finished it. And now I can just get people to call me doctor if I'm, in a pissy mood. Um But yeah, so I get into New Japan and then I'm like, oh, the Young Bucks are a thing. Oh, and they're moving all over the place. That's cool. They're having these really athletic and cool matches, and that's just kind of snowballs from here. And now I'm just, yelling about wrestling into the void all the time because I'm a normal, well-adjusted person. Anyways, that's the setup to say that Daniel Bryan's one of those guys that like Bryan Danielson, sorry, is still something that I struggle with, even though like I heard of him first as Bryan Danielson. He's someone that like achieved that kind of legendary unicorn status for like, oh, this guy rules, but I didn't get to see much of his Ring of Honor stuff, and I didn't have the money at that point for DVDs. And So, he's really good in WWE. I know that, people that were used to him before and after are like, ah, that's not real because it's WWE. He has some really damn good matches in there. He really perfected that style, which I think is very impressive considering, what he is and what he was doing before and after. And then the injuries, blah, blah, blah. And then he comes to AEW and has just absolute fantastic matches out of the gate for the entire time he's wrestling there. And I mean, if you go back and watch like basically anything he was doing before as well, shocker, he is extremely good at that too. He's really good at all these different styles. He adapted his game very well, depending where he went. And I mean, he's really a underrated promo. It's funny that he got the label that he couldn't talk early in his career when he became a absolutely fantastic promo. It just wasn't like let's try to recapture Macho Man, 1986 stuff. Um and Yeah, I mean, I just think he's excellent. He's great on offense. He's great selling. He's great at making people freak out when he does a seizure cell. Apparently. Um and Yeah, I mean, I adore his work. I think he's one of the most interesting pro wrestlers ever. In my fact, he's I think the best, as far as I can tell from what I have seen. I don't know if that's a good answer at all or not, Jesse, but
I'm of course a Danielson hater, noted for that.
what a
Yeah,
jerk.
I know. I have him at 32, which is really low, I think, for Bryan Danielson
Terrible.
on this. Like,
Terrible.
I just like speculation about like who's going to come in number one based on like what people have seen, and a lot of people think Bryan Danielson is going to be number one on this list. So the consensus is with you. Um,
We'll
and I,
see. I think a lot of different people could finish number one, honestly. Because it's, you've expanded it so much.
yeah,
And I just think there's a lot of viable candidates, and it's a really interesting conversation. And I hope people don't lose sight of that. Like, I will, we complained about the nomination process being a bit flawed earlier and all that, but like, this is a fun thing, and you're getting a lot of people from, different circles coming together. And yeah, we can all dunk on someone who's like Alexa Bliss is the 87th best wrestler of all time or whatever. And like, if by most metrics, I think that would be pretty much a silly take. But if you don't know better, if that's what you've seen, then okay. And you can also look at people that know more than me. Like I've seen one Jim Breaks match, for example. I haven't really dug into British wrestling at all, but I just watched the Jim Breaks match a couple months ago. I was like, man, this guy is really interesting. Then I looked up his Wikipedia page, found out about his personal life, and dug on the collar a few times. But it's just he worked really interestingly. I can't rank him off of one match. I feel like that'd be a really fucked up thing to do. But like it's a great opportunity to have people that know all this different stuff, be able to talk back and forth about wrestling. And even if you don't actually engage with someone about it, like personally, you can at least like look at it and be like, all right, well, blah 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 finishes 60 second. And I've never like Volcan finishes 60 second. He'll probably do better. But Volcan's there. I should really check out some Volcan stuff because he apparently is considered great. And you can figure out for yourself, okay, so I can see why he's great, and I can figure out if I like him or not.
yeah. I try to not think too much about like who number one was, and I just went with Mitsuharu Misawa for a couple of
Good
reasons.
pick. Yeah.
And I think because actually, when you fill out the survey, it asks you, why did you pick this person number one? Um, and I think for me, Misawa combines these two things that are really important in pro wrestling. And the first is that he is an excellent worker, and he's one of the best workers of all time. I don't really need to explain that really any further, but if you haven't watched any Mitsuharu matches, you should.
Yes.
Um, but the other thing that he has is that he has this kind of old school connection with the audience that he wrestles in front of, where he just feels like a bigger star than wrestlers would feel like in subsequent generations. We lost that as a wrestling culture um in the last few decades. Like this kind of like deity like view that the fans would have for like the top babyface, the top wrestler in the company. And when you watch these Misawa matches, especially, peak Misawa, peak 90s All Japan, the enthusiasm and feedback from the audience, the support that he has, and the energy that brings to the matches, just how important everything feels because of it, has not been matched, kind of after that era of All Japan comes to a close. And there are wrestlers who are as good, if not better, than Mitsuharu Misawa in terms of just bell to bell in ring work. There's not many, but I think there's a few. But none of them have that kind of crowd connection. And the wrestlers that do have that crowd connection from prior generations to Misawa don't have the kind of in-ring work that Misawa has. So I think he has the best of those two very important things, which is that he's an
Yeah.
excellent in-ring performer and he has that crowd connection that just like okay, like Hulk Hogan had a good crowd connection too. But Hulk Hogan wrestled like a cartoony, unrealistic style.
Hmm.
Misawa wrestled the connection with Misawa is like goes hand in hand with like the physical combat of what he's doing. Like just to use compare like Hogan as a comparison or like WWF style. Like yeah, you watch like Hogan in the 80s. God, he's got incredible crowd connection. The crowd thinks of him as a god. But like they're cheering for the storyline. They're cheering for like, the big Bobby Heenan bump when Hogan gives him a boot off the apron or something like that. They're not cheering the struggle. And that's what I think of when I think of Misawa. So I have Misawa 1, Kawada 2,
Okay.
largely for the same reasons.
Great picks. Love both those
And
guys.
I could have gone Kobashi third. I decided to be like, I can't just do that. I gotta mix it up. So I went with Jumbo, which isn't really mixing it up that much. So I have Misawa, Kawada, Saruta, and then I have Kenny
Mhm.
Omega, Okada, Osprey. Then I slide in Kenta Kobashi,
Okay.
Steve Austin, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Bret Hart. My top 10.
Cool.
Um, but that's why I feel like Misawa, and I also think Misawa has become underrated in recent years. I
Yeah,
think
that's
that,
the talking point with Alan Farrell as well.
yeah, well, I brought it up to Alan, let's be honest. Um, I think it's trendy to pick the other four pillars as your favorite four pillar. I think picking Misawa is like saying your favorite meal is a Big Mac. He's the most popular one historically. Um, and I think it's me personally, like I've always said Kawada is my actual favorite four pillar.
Mhm.
I like Kawada more than I like Misawa, but I do think Misawa is better than Kawada, if that makes sense. But I enjoy Kawada more. So I'm like one of those guys, a Kawada guy. There's a lot of people that are, Kobashi guys. Think Kobashi's the best. There's some real like lunatics out there that think Akira Taue is they're the best, which is a
Yeah. A wild
objectively
take, but hey,
wrong
go for it.
opinion. Um, and I just feel like Misawa is kind of like the guy that like it would be boring to say Misawa is your favorite four pillar because he was the most pushed out of those guys in the
Sure.
90s and he was the ace of the company and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I think and now we're reflecting back on it and it's like Misawa is the best of all those guys and it's kind of like coming full circle for me because when I first started watching those matches, obviously I wasn't watching them in real time. Masao was the guy. He was the top guy. He was the guy with the most five-star matches in Observer history. I think that Osprey maybe has passed him by now, but Misawa was the guy. And the other guy's really good too, but it was Misawa. And then, when something becomes a little too consensus, people like to zag, and I understand that. And not everyone's going to cheer for the white meat baby face every time either.
Sure, yeah.
That's one of the reasons I like Kawada so much. It's like Kawada isn't just like the babyface doing comebacks. He's kind of like the bully, kind of overlooked heel. I like that kind of style too. But Misawa to me is, I think, like the perfect professional wrestler. And I don't see anyone ever being better than him. I think something Dave said a long time ago, which he said about Kenta Kobashi, obviously. But he just said, you know what? I don't think I'm never gonna say anyone's better than Kobashi. Like there might be people that I feel like are just as good as Kobashi, but I'll never say anyone is better than him. That's kind of the way I feel about a lot of the guys in my top 10. Like I'll never say anyone is better than these 10 guys.
Yeah.
There are guys that are just as good because there's obviously 10 of them, but I'm like, there's no one that's just as good. I'm never gonna say someone's better than Misawa.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. I mean, like I said, like I think there's at least 15 people you could reasonably have number one. And I mean, like three of the four pillars makes sense. I can't really get on board with Tawe, but I know some people are going to like him the
I,
best
I
for
didn't I
whatever
didn't rank
reason.
I didn't rank Taue. I'm a Taue disrespecter. I didn't want him in the Observer Hall of Fame. I think Dave changed the rules that helped him get in. I think that was a joke. Everyone knows that I'm a huge Taue disrespecter.
Yeah, I think you're wrong on the tag team thing, but that's another conversation. I think Taoi's pretty good. I had him 75th. I think he's in I think he's in a bunch of great matches. I like him as a worker. He's not what I would call classically um great, but I think he's great in a different way. Um that I enjoy. And yeah, pro Tawe in that sense, I reckon.
I think now see, going through both of our respective lists, you and I have a lot of similarities in our lists,
Hmm.
which I'm kind of interested in because I thought, I did what I felt like were going to be some different things in my list that maybe not everyone did. And you kind of matched that in a lot of ways. One of them that
Okay.
jumps out right away to me is both of us have Will Ospreay very high. I have him
Yeah.
sixth, and you have him second.
Yeah.
And a part of me wanting to do this list was I said I want to respect the current guys as much as possible. And I think there's a natural hesitancy to be like and it's not just wrestlers, it can be kind of anything to put like anyone contemporary in the same rarefied air as like these, Jumbo Saruda,
Yeah.
Bret Hart, pick your Ric Flair, pick your favorite, all time like legendary, almost mythical like wrestler. How can you say someone is as good as this legendary wrestler and they're only like, 32 years old? But to me, like Will Ospreay, like is already on the list of greatest wrestlers of all time. If I was listing like what are my favorite matches of all time out of every match I've ever seen, many of them would be Will Ospreay matches. It's backed up by him, winning Wrestler of the Year awards, having just incredible years on top as a top wrestler, and just having incredible variety of matches with different opponents all over the world. Um, and I wanted to respect him. I wanted to respect Kenny Omega, who I have fourth and you have sixth. I want to respect Okada, who I have fifth and you have seventh. So I really wanted to be respectful to those guys. And I think Will Ospreay is going to finish not in the top 10 on the greatest wrestlers ever
No.
project.
Probably
Um,
top 100 probably.
yeah, if he didn't make the top 100, I would say like that's really hard done. And obviously, there's some people that really dislike Will Ospreay's
Oh
wrestling
yeah, yeah.
style. So but I think if he doesn't make the top 100, I think it's going to be largely because there are people who don't feel like it's like suitable enough to rank him yet at this point.
Yeah.
Is largely
I
what's
mean,
going to
he's
keep him
he's been a
off.
top guy for what, a decade
Yeah,
at
if we
this
went,
point? Like,
if like we were to, if you took Will Ospreay's run and said like, oh, it was a guy whose career is from 1987 to 1997,
hmm.
he would
Yeah,
be rated extremely highly.
exactly. Let me pull up just double check some dates here on DiBiase, but I think DiBiase was basically a like a great wrestler from, you know, what are we saying, 84, 85?
A great wrestler. The years on him. I feel like he's a good wrestler earlier than that, but not by
Okay.
much.
Yeah, so 82.
Sure.
Okay, we'll go 82.
I'm just off the top of my head. Like I can't tell
Sure,
you like
yeah,
when
no.
his breakout was.
And I haven't dug into his 80s stuff very much,
Mhm.
unfortunately, so I'm not going to pretend like I know, but I know it's around there. By 93, he's done, so that's 11 years, 12 years. Um, you can basically compare Osprey or Omega to that, because they were, or Okada. I mean, they've been great and featured for a decade,
How
at
would you
least.
compare him to Frank Shamrock?
Frank Shamrock, whose own nomination is, well, this is a weird one, so we have to count some non-matches because he only has one real match. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm also simultaneously arguing with the people in the GWE Discord right now about how the nomination process is flawed, and the defense I'm getting back is, oh well, we have a process and you should have been nominated. And I'm like, I'm trying to point out that, if the process isn't giving you good results, then it's a flawed
Yeah.
process,
I don't want
frankly.
to push too. I don't want to push too hard on that because it's their
Yeah,
thing. I don't want to
yeah,
be like,
it's yeah.
like this thing I participated in. I'm making content out of actually sucks. You guys need to do a better
Yeah,
job.
no,
I
that's
don't
not
want
what
to say
I'm
that.
not
Yeah.
trying to do that either, I'm just, Um, there's some, there's little silly bits, but there's some people that are also like going to do the 100. I never did with like the VOW top matches list. I never did the not novelty, but the
Vanity
you know,
pick.
yeah, vanity pick for
Like a
number
match you
10.
really enjoyed more than you maybe expected, but it's probably not one of the 10 best matches of the year.
Yeah, I'm just wired to be like, nope, number 10 match here, beep boop boop. You know, like an idiot. I can't help myself. That's just how I just think it should be done, I guess. I think if you're like, this match was only 3.25 stars, but I thought it'd be 1 star, and that's pretty cool. I'm like, no, why is that? That's not the 10th best match at all. That's very silly.
Yeah, but anyway, I wanted to really give these guys, like you said, like and like you're right, you can compare it, especially when you can look at eras like wrestling careers weren't as long back
Yeah.
then for a lot of different reasons. Maybe they were wrestling higher volumes of matches. How did you weigh um, guys who there's kind of two schools of thought. There are guys who have, and we kind of talked about this earlier when we were talking about like MJF, but right,
Hmm.
wrestlers who have like really high end peaks of like oh they have if you like made a mixtape of their 10 best matches you'd be thinking one of their best wrestlers of all time versus guys who were more consistent. Or to think of it a different way, guys who just have a lot of stuff that you don't really like
Yeah.
in their career.
It's an interesting conversation. I think I tend towards thinking that, having high level stuff is really more valuable, uh, versus like being a consistent, like pretty good worker, I think that being able to have some high watermarks, but also maybe, crap in the bed once in a while it's more interesting to me than just being like, I go out, I do my match, it's pretty good, people like it well enough, and I do that for 20 years. And I think that's preferable. I'd rather have someone that's capable of being great, but sometimes really frustrates you by being doing something really dopey, and something you hate, versus someone who just kind of is, like very lunch pail, like, well, time to go do a wrestling match. I know how to do it. It's the same thing I've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah.
No
I'm not thinking of it
variations.
as more like someone is more like basic. I'm thinking just someone who's
Hmm.
a little bit more reliable,
Yeah.
I guess, as
I
a
guess it
top
depends on the
performer.
level of reliability.
Yeah. Let's compare two guys who have never been compared before, Bret
Okay.
Hart and Shawn
Shawn
Michaels.
Michaels.
Yeah.
I,
Because if you were to say like five best matches of Bret Hart versus five best matches from Shawn Michaels, I might go with Shawn Michaels, just to use a loose name. But Shawn has elements to his career that I really don't like.
yeah.
Brett does not.
Um,
Brett is just really freaking solid as a top guy all the time. And Shawn has these things like his Hogan matches, the Hogan match, and like some of his matches when he's conked out of his mind. Like just
yeah.
he has these misses that I am like, okay, this is ultimately what's going to separate them on my list by I had Bret Hart 10, Shawn Michaels 19. So obviously, I still rank Shawn Michaels super high, but there's just elements where I'm like, you know what, there are some real knocks on him, even if his highs are as high as anybody. And Shawn Michaels was high a lot.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Honestly, I think that as time goes on, that kind of washes out a little bit, like the really bad stuff.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
part of it too.
yeah,
That's definitely part of it.
because you ask someone right now, what do you think of when you think of Shawn Michaels' career? And most people are not going to be like, I remember when he, went on TV and his eyeballs were rolling around in his skull in 1997, when Vince McMahon, who may be the most Shawn Michaels respecter of all time, would be like, no, you can't wrestle, man. You're not. I can't have you on my
And who
TV.
always had the personal health of his talent at the
Oh
top of
yes,
his
yes,
mind.
definitely
Yeah.
cared about that. Yeah. Um, that was very high on his priority list. He never had anyone that he mistreated or allowed to destroy their lives just to wring some more money out of them. Um,
But I think that's just an interesting
no,
perspective. Like,
yeah, it's a super
like,
interesting question. Just it's very philosophical, and there's no right answer on it.
like who has some, like MJF definitely has some bombs. Now, you and I
Yeah,
both ranked MJF, which I think is not going to be the case.
no,
Why
no.
did you want to rank MJF?
It's been 7 years, and like most of it's been great. There's been duds. Like I think a really underrated dud he had was the first Moxley feud in 2020.
Yeah.
The
There was like the
fake presidential
yeah,
election nonsense when like everyone's freaking out about the country. Anyone who's doing a presidential election gimmick in the past 10 years is like
yeah.
completely out of
It's
lunch.
not funny anymore, man.
No, it's not, Dole versus Clinton anymore, where
Yeah.
there's some shit going on. You may want to read a newspaper. Um, and like, I would also point to the what was it? What was his catchphrase? The war for 24 or whatever.
The
Uh,
bidding war of
yeah,
24.
yeah, where he
Yeah.
kept talking about how he was an impending free agent, and like I think that actually did some damage to the company. Not like massive or anything, but like meaningful.
Yeah.
Like
Didn't really have a huge payoff either. It just was kind of
no, it
like
was just like, hey guys, I might sign a new
I
contract, and
guess
you're
the
like,
idea was he
okay,
was getting heat because he was like, "Oh, I might threaten to leave," and like a lot, the way people think now is like, "Okay, leave then." Like, like you're not gonna get good heat from that. Like the heat you're gonna get are people who are gonna be like, "Oh, like go ahead, leave, I don't care," or like the people like and those aren't like the people that are gonna like. It's not gonna translate to like a wrestling match kind of level of heat. I guess is my point.
yeah. So yeah, like he's done some really shitty stuff, but like the chain match with CM Punk, the matches with Danielson, with Adam Page, mostly. Like I think he's had a lot of fantastic, like really high level stuff. I think when he isn't doing a lot of shtick, he's a high level pro wrestler. I think he can when he's not doing a lot of shtick, he's got great presence, great mic skills. Like it's the kind of stuff that is just ranked super highly, I think, for me. And he's been doing it for long enough. I mean, he's been on TV for 7 years now. Um, and he's delivering pay-per-view matches that are usually just super fantastic. Like really high level stuff. And it seems like a slam dunk to me. Now I get why the bads outweigh the good. Um, but I don't see the scale tilting that way personally. But this voting is so incredibly personal that I can't sit here and criticize anyone who doesn't vote for him, or they didn't like the Death Rider, so they didn't vote for John Moxley, who I think is not only like should be a top 100 wrestler, but like is at this point should be in the Observer Hall of Fame just because of how long he's been great.
Yes. I
You
have
know, I
Moxley at 35 and you have Moxley at 31. All right. And this is not intentional. Our lists have a lot of like just similarities
similarities,
and we
yeah.
did not like consult beforehand. Like, hey, let's make a list that looks
No, no, no.
together.
Like there's I didn't show this to anyone because I was, petrified out of my mind of how shitty it was. So, but like, yeah, like, and there's a lot of names on here that you can do this with. You could be like, ah, just to go, through my 34 through 37. I have Minoru Suzuki at 34. You could be like, oh, now he's just old and does a lot of
Yeah.
comedy shtick. It
There
sucks.
are some dead parts of Suzuki's career. It's not
Yeah,
30 years of consecutive
exactly.
greatness.
35 Vader. Well, he sucked in WWF.
Yep.
And then his career was over in '01, basically, or
Vader was
'90.
another one. I haven't Vader 21. God, I love Vader so much.
Yeah,
But like
Vader rules.
Vader
And
has parts of his career that aren't that good.
yeah, Aja Kong. Aja Kong hasn't really been great or mobile at least in like 20 years, I mean, Mystico. I mean, you could just say Sin Cara and be smug about it if you want to be. I think that's really a awful argument, but yeah, I mean, you can do all this stuff. Mark Briscoe, well, he wasn't Jay, I have him at 38 because I think Mark Briscoe is a fantastic, like a modern TV worker. Ricochet disappeared in WWF. Yeah, well, I mean, or he got him old. But it doesn't take away like his PWG stuff was some of the best stuff I've ever seen. So on and so forth.
Yeah, Ricochet is one of my like early Jesse getting into indie wrestling. Like saw this guy do a double rotation moonsault in
Yeah.
like 2009 or whatever, and I was like, I gotta watch more of this guy. And yeah, Ricochet's like pre WWE career is probably pretty underrated. I think
Yeah.
like he's got so much good stuff in Dragon Gate, so much good stuff on the indies. Like even like his Prince Puma stuff in Lucha Underground's really good. Like
Yeah. Because he's a fantastic wrestler and just, he went to WWE and they're like, oh, too small. Have never used a high flyer properly.
well, I always say this about Ricochet. Like Ricochet was in the storytelling company, and he was a guy without a character that they would trot out for like the Money in the Bank ladder match to do
Yeah.
something to do a spot, and then he went to the company that's nothing but high spots and suddenly developed a personality and everything like that. So
Yeah. It's amazing how that works.
yeah. Um, but yeah. I mean, you could point to most wrestlers' career and say there's down periods,
Sure. Yeah.
and like MJF, I am. Like most of the matches of his that people that seem to be divisive, I'm usually like pretty pro. Like I really, really enjoy the last MJF Hangman Page Texas
Yeah. I
Death
thought that
Match.
was a damn good match.
Yeah, I think that's gonna finish very high for me in Match of the Year.
I think
But
some people just are at the point with him where they just kind of cross their, arms and are
I
like,
mean, yes, but
MJF
I think
sucks.
that was the I think there are a lot of people that aren't like that were like, oh, I didn't really like that match. But like, I'm just saying in general, like I'm usually on the high end, so that's probably why I'm including him here.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
only match of his big match that like really shit the bed was the Adam Cole Wembley Stadium match.
Yeah. That was a disaster. Genuinely one of the worst main events I've ever seen, I
Yeah,
think, just
and
because
especially given the spot.
completely misread like every aspect of what they should probably have been trying to do. I think that the closest I've ever come to wanting to smoke, I think, was when MJF was like, "I don't care about the belt. I just want to be your friends." Like I might have just been better off if I paused it and went outside and like was like, "Okay, I need a cigarette. This is not a thing I do, but I think I just need something to, to not have this happen."
Yes. So you, like me, had tremendous respect for the Young Bucks
Hmm.
on your list, and I went Nick Jackson 16, Matt Jackson 17, um, and then you have Nick at 20 and Matt at 25. Why do you have them separated? Just curious.
I thought you had to, frankly.
But they're separated by like more. Like I
Oh,
have Nick and then Matt.
Oh,
Like
you
they're
mean by a
base.
couple spots?
Yeah.
I think Nick's better in ring. And my interpretation of this is, in ring is what this is really about.
I
It's
think
kind,
Nick is a better worker than Matt Jackson.
yeah, and I think Matt's a better personality. At
Yeah,
the other stuff.
personally, I didn't think the difference is. I think there's such a package deal, and I think Nick, Nick does some more high spots and is probably a better bell to bell worker. But like, how much of like those excellent tag matches is like Matt putting together? Like, I don't know that.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
that's kind of the impossible stuff to
to
say.
me, I feel like there's such a package deal that like I was like I even though I think Nick is better in that Nick has a few singles matches, but in the grand scheme of things, is that really that big of a difference? Like Nick has
Yeah,
a couple really good singles matches
it's
that
not meaningful,
yeah.
really.
I was like I have to put them together. But I was like, these guys I think are the greatest tag team of all time. They have amazing matches. I want to watch Young Bucks match more than almost any other wrestler. Like why can't I put them in the top 10? I chickened out and didn't, but I was like, if like honestly, like if Nick and Matt Jackson 1, 2 for someone, I wouldn't be like, I don't hate that.
Yeah, I mean, I would understand it for sure. I agree. I think they're the best tag team at this point of all time, just because, if nothing else, like longevity, and I really like their work and everything. Um, I think the Midnight Express is probably my second, though. You have a real breakdown of like how long were they around? Are we counting
And
their
that's tough
Conquer
because of the
years?
different incarnations and like
Yeah,
and when we're talking about this is about ranking individuals.
yeah.
So like
I only voted for Eden out of the Express people.
yeah. I voted to Eaton and Stanley, but I have Eaton like 20 spots ahead of Stanley.
Yeah, because I mean Eden had all the stuff afterwards. But yeah, I mean, like it's just I would have preferred to vote for the Bucks as a unit. I would have preferred to vote for FTR as a unit, but I also know that like if you're doing this kind of thing, it'd be kind of a nightmare to manage.
Yeah.
Someone that voted for Cash Wheeler on his own. How do I manage that with an FTR joint vote?
And the Young Bucks are pretty hard because they are one of the only teams that are really almost inseparable as a tag team. Like you and I both have the Briscoe brothers on here, but we have them, separated by a little bit because they do have
Hmm.
very separate, distinct singles careers at this point in
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
I think they're largely on this list driven by their tag team work together, but they have very separate careers. And like, let's, like, Kawada and Taue, like someone might just put them as a tag team,
yeah.
Holy Demon
And
Army on the list, and it's like, okay, well now like where do like imagine like
yeah, it'd
trying to
be
parse
it'd
that
be
out.
from an
Yeah.
administrative aspect to be a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
The only way I could see it working is if you're like, okay, these tag teams are specifically
Yeah,
like,
announcing in advance, like,
yeah, like
and I would get so mad if Holy Demon Army was on there
yeah, like
because I'd
the
have
Road
to
War.
tie Taue to Kawada, which is like my least favorite
I
thing to
think
do.
you'd absolutely have to like their careers are basically only the tag parts. Like I think you could do
Yeah,
it with the Road Warriors.
yep, that's a good one.
I mean, you could argue about like, well, Hawk wrestled some, but I mean,
Yeah,
like outside of like a couple tags in New Japan, is anyone really like, moved by what he was doing during this period? Um,
yeah, like I had Kerry Morton on my list, um, and
Carrie
they really
Morton,
Kerry Morton.
like the junior, like Ricky's son.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Kerry, Ricky Morton. Why did I say
Okay,
I
all
had
right,
to,
okay.
okay. No,
I was
no,
like,
yeah,
bold
Kerry
take, but
Morton.
okay, go for it.
You're like Kerry Morton. I'm like, yeah, Kerry Morton. You don't need like
Yeah, I
one of the
love
greatest
his
tag team
NWA
wrestlers of all
stuff.
time. Yeah,
This
no,
isn't, clarifying at all.
yeah, yeah. Like I had Ricky Morton. I had 57.
So what do you think about the results that have come out so far? I mean, granted, it's very early. We're into like up to 730th.
It's too early. Other than that, it's just weird that like Muhammad Ali is on it. That's all I can
Yeah.
say.
It's fun to look at the weird stuff and be like, oh, huh, how about that? Someone's super into Mr. Fuji, I guess.
Well, let me
Interesting.
ask you, Fred. Like, do you have any favorite wrestlers from when you were like a kid, first starting watching wrestling that now were like objectively like not really that good, but they were your favorites?
Hmm. That's such a good question.
Because I mean that I could see that's why like so maybe someone like Buff Bagwell got some votes. Like maybe someone was like, when I was 9 years old, I fucking love Buff
I did
Bagwell.
like Buff Bagwell.
Yeah,
I thought he was kind of good. Booker T's too good for this, and Sting is too much of like a Dave Meltzer, opinion coded answer. Which Dave is wrong on, but that's okay. Um,
I would have never put Sting on this list before his AEW run, and his AEW run made me appreciate the rest of his career so much more.
I still can't put him on the list, but like I think his WCW stuff is, a little underrated just because there's some really good stuff in there. It's just there is some
I
very
just think
underwhelming stuff
he
too.
is amazing at being a wrestling star.
Yeah.
And it's
He
not all, it's not all work, it's not all his selling or crazy moves or
mhm.
things like that. But I just think he understood how to be a wrestling star in a fun way. And I didn't really appreciate that. Like, I didn't watch him like his peak in real time because I'm too young. But like my before his AEW run, my experience was him in TNA where he's old and he's like, oh well, he did that. He had the whole successful angle with Hogan in the '90s, but he wasn't even really wrestling then. Blah 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 storyline. Um, but like it wasn't until I really I like his AEW run helped put into I think his career into a clearer perspective for me personally.
Yeah. God, I'm looking through like the '97 WWF roster, and I kind of like the headbangers because I used them in a video game a little bit,
Sure.
but
And
like
I'm sure
not
there's
really.
reasons why there are
Yeah.
people who voted on this to put wrestlers in there because they like their video game character or they
That
like
was
their
a
entrance.
Yeah, their theme song was pretty good. Not really great, but you know. Um, yeah, I can't say like my guy was Owen Hart, and secretly I guess everyone thinks Owen Hart is actually great. So,
Yeah,
you
you were
know,
right. You just had excellent
I
judgment
didn't
as a
know.
child. Yeah.
Like I love Mick Foley, and I was also correct about that apparently. Man, I need more people talk about how Diamond Dallas Page was actually fantastic. I feel like he's been lost a little bit, mainly because of how relatively short his career was, but he,
Well, his career and then like just like right as he was peaking as a top guy, the company goes completely off the rails.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is really unfortunate. Uh, Another guy I've really come to appreciate a lot over the past few years, just watching older stuff, is Scott Steiner.
Yeah.
And it's specifically early '90s Scott Steiner, because if you had Scott Steiner, from like 1991 working today, he'd blend right in, and two, people would be shitting themselves about how great he is.
Yeah. I talked about this
Um,
with Oliver Lee Bateman on my Observer Hall of Fame podcast last year. But like
yeah.
in terms of just raw natural talent as a wrestler, Scott Steiner has very few peers.
Yeah. And Breaker is very much like him,
Yeah.
unsurprisingly. But I mean, like I watch him, after that like first year in XT where he was green as grass. Like you could, it was very clear that like, oh, this is Scott Steiner Jr. basically, and he's fantastic at being a Steiner. And of course, they're in their infinite wisdom because they're too concerned about copyright. They're like, we got to call him Braun Breaker.
He yeah, Scott Steiner like he just, he had the look, he has outrageous athleticism, credibility coming across like a badass.
Great
Him
GIF wrestler too.
Yeah, I mean him and Rick are like ahead of their times in
Yeah.
terms of like you watch their work in like 1991, you're like those guys are would fit right in today. They just feel authentic, um, real. Even when he became a like ridiculous caricature of an individual, he still kind
Yeah.
of felt real to a degree.
Yeah. I mean, he had a great personality that kind of came out later. I think that you get a lot of like completely insane moments with him, which I have a soft spot for, is when like the Juice Robinson kind of thing, is another example of just like this guy is completely insane, and it only could work in pro wrestling. And I think that's you got a lot of that with Scott Steiner in the, I guess, the aughts. With the TNA run and the late stage WCW where he
Yeah.
was a push guy.
With
And
Braun, yeah, I was looking at my 30 under 30 today 'cause that's coming up.
mhm.
And I was looking at I'm gonna put Braun Breaker at the bottom of it. And I just like my explanation is just gonna be like, I want to still believe. He really hasn't done a whole lot in the last year.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's the problem I always have with 30 under 30 is like, are we just voting purely on the last year? Because like I have Kaida Kiyomiya in my list still, and that's
yeah.
because in
If you were to sum
2023
up
he
his
was
entire career.
fantastic. Yeah, like in 2022 and 2023 he was like one of the best wrestlers in the world. And then Noah was like, we don't respect you at all. We're going to try to sabotage you for really,
Well,
weird
yeah.
reasons.
And, well, then you end up in like the Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate kind of scenario where it's like these
Yeah.
guys were really good. They're not really anymore because they're just not allowed to be.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
like, they weren't even wrestling for such a long
I
time.
know, but
And
like, it's
now
like,
it's
but if
like
we're just
just,
based on what they've accomplished, like before
yeah.
they turn 30, which is kind of in the spirit, I think, of 30 under
Yeah.
30, um,
But I feel like
it's,
those
yeah,
two are different just because I don't think they're going to try to be great anymore. And like, maybe that'll happen with Kiyomiya. Maybe he'll just like, become completely resigned to his fate in life. But, yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
it's tough. But yeah, with Braun Breaker, you want to know who I think? This is like kind of a take that came to me the other day when I was thinking about Scott Steiner.
sure.
I see. I think of when I see him, I think of him like Scott Steiner, even though he's in a lot of ways very different. I think of Bolton Oleg and I think of Scott Steiner.
Yeah, that's a good comp. There would have been some six-man tags.
Like there's just like a physical presence and
Yeah,
like legitimacy and athleticism where it's like this guy's bigger, faster, stronger than everyone else. And he
we
just
need
comes across like a badass.
wrestling needs more
Yeah.
Steiner slash Bolton
He
type
doesn't have
guys.
he doesn't have like just Scott's like crazy bodybuilder juiced up maniac
Yeah,
energy, which would be helpful in a pro wrestling sense.
yeah.
Probably not as helpful in a social sense, um, but he reminds me of that. He's just like that kind of special kind of athlete and
Yeah.
presence. Who do you just off the top of your head, who do you think is going to be on your list is like the most obscure person that will probably get like the least amount of support?
Mio Watanabe, which is like the vote that I am like, this probably might be the worst part of my list. I had her like 91st or something. Scrolling right now to find the, yeah, 91st.
I think with the
And
volume, you'll be okay with her.
yeah, I think that one will age well. But I mean, she's been like a top person in Tokyo Joshi Pro for like 4 years, and I genuinely think she's been one of the best wrestlers and definitely one of the best women wrestlers over that entire period. And yeah, I think she's like one of the best baby faces I've ever seen. Um and also despite being, small, is a fantastic power worker. And I think that's really cool. I've always loved that combination of like small guy that's like, hey, I'm gonna hurt some people around.
Yeah, well, it's in the context of her promotion too.
Yeah.
You know, it would be, uh, she's not necessarily wrestling. Like, she's not in the ring with like Megan Bayne, and
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
She's not perking around Awesome Kong.
yeah, kind of want to see that now.
That would be a great match. I'd pay to see that.
Yeah, I don't. I feel like mine's really chalk, to be honest. Like my like vanity picks, and I don't even consider them vanity picks because they're so awesome. But like, I have Nigel at 43.
I'd say that's high, but I wouldn't be surprised by Nigel being on
I really wanted to
ballots.
put Nigel ahead of Bryan Danielson, but the volume of Danielson's career is just a little overwhelming, even for
Yeah.
me. Like, but like that, my take is like I peak Nigel over peak Bryan easily for me.
Let's
Um,
see. I'm looking at your list right now. I think I understand why Amazing Red is there, and I don't think you're like gonna be on an island alone with him.
None of my picks have appeared yet on this list,
Yeah.
so in the
I,
first like 100 that have come out, I'm still all my guys are still alive, which is pretty cool, I guess. But I also only picked awesome people, so yeah.
um
Amazing Red's
that's the one that
definitely
sticks out, I think.
Yeah, Amazing Red's definitely a more of a vanity pick. His career isn't super duper long.
No, it's not. And it gets wrecked like really early.
Yeah.
My problem
Um,
with Amazing Red is that there's been a little bit of hey guys, we're bringing Amazing Red out to face someone at House of Glory, and it gets buzzed like 2 or 3 times a year, and I'm always like seemingly the low guy on those. I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good match, but
oh,
the guy who's wrestling,
yeah, see, this is why he's on my list and not yours. I
yeah,
think he's still really good. Like,
yeah, I think he's good, but like I watch it, I'm like, if they were facing someone other than Amazing Red, I think that match would have been better. And I hate to say that because I recognize his import and greatness and everything, and just at the same time, like, you know,
Amazing Red is the wrestler who kind of like got me into independent wrestling,
okay, cool.
I would say. Like, he, um, yeah, like I'm thinking, well, when you were talking about that, I was just trying to find out what year it is. Yeah, in 2021, he has his first match in 2 years against Will Ospreay, um, which is like an incredible match. Now, to be fair, he was wrestling Will Ospreay,
Yeah, yeah.
um, but so like yeah, when I was a kid and I was watching TNA, and I saw Amazing Red, and I said, man, this guy is so good, and he's doing TNA, so he's not really doing like he's not getting a ton of run in TNA. It's like how can and I typed his name into YouTube and like this is probably like 2010, and I just started watching all of these Amazing Red matches from the tri-state area throughout the
Hmm.
2000s, and that is how I kind of got started like with independent wrestling, and eventually starting watching a lot of wrestling in Japan. So he's definitely like that's kind of like a vanity pick for him. He also has um he has some of my favorite just like random moments in wrestling. Like he has this match that I think is, I want to say it's from 2000 or 2001. Very early indie match. I forget even who it's against. His name is just Red. He's not Amazing
Yeah.
Red yet. He's just Red.
He hasn't
He,
been upgraded yet.
yeah, he appears to be he looks like he's about 14 years old. He weighs about 110 pounds. He's coming out. He's dressed like in like the 2000s, like just really
Baggy
baggy clothes. Just
pants.
like looks
Yeah.
ridiculous in a lot of
The
ways.
the the indie wrestler special,
Yeah.
of that era.
The fans are like laughing at him as he's getting in the ring, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this guy's a wrestler. What a joke. Ha ha ha. And then like the commentators, of course, are like shitty early 2000s indie commentators that are
Yeah.
like just making jokes and stuff like that. And then like he just goes out and he does like 10,000 amazing moves that none of these people had ever seen before because this was, a time where wrestling was less homogenous.
Yeah.
And he's just doing all of this, a lot of like lucha stuff and things like that. And the announcers who were making fun of him are like losing their mind. All the people that were laughing at him when he was walking to the ring are like, "Oh my God, this guy's the greatest wrestler I've ever seen in my entire life." And it's just like such a special moment. Um, that I just is one of the things I love about wrestling. Um, and yeah, like if you were to say like his volume really isn't there, but I like my small fast guys, and he is in a lot of ways like the original small fast guy for me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I got Ray, but I
yeah, but
understand what you're saying.
Ray,
Yeah.
yeah, and honestly, like I would put Amazing Red and Ray in the same. Ray's obviously a much better acclaimed wrestler, but like I put them in the same category as like guys who wrestled in America at that size that were convincing. Amazing Red has a match with Kurt Angle on an episode of Impact in like 2010. That's like a 5 minute match. It's like the greatest 5 minute match I've ever seen in my entire life.
I need to watch that. That sounds pretty great.
And it's just like I remember everything. Like it was back during the ranking. They had rankings. This is like Hogan Bischoff era. Like they had rankings and like Kurt Angle, he's wrestling Frankie Kazarian on the pay-per-view, who's number 10 in the rankings, and Kurt Angle's like, Frankie Kazarian, he's the X Division champion. I need an X Division wrestler to wrestle to get me ready. And then it's like the Amazing Red comes out and they have like an insane like 6 minute match. It's probably on YouTube. Garrett Kidney's listening to this. He'll that match, if it's not on YouTube, will appear very shortly.
Yeah, I feel like you could probably say that into a mirror three times uh and summon Garrett, having done that.
Yeah. One time I was just talking about like a random like triangle X Division Ultimate X match that took place on Dynamite involving Greg Marashulo. Do you know who Greg Marashulo is?
Uh the name rings a bell.
Okay, so it's Trent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It was like Greg. He's wrestling as Greg Marashulo. And it's a really fun match. And I was just like, talking about it on my podcast, and like the next day it uploaded it onto TNA YouTube account.
Nice.
So, was there anyone that you wanted to put on here, but was ultimately just like, I can't do it.
I mean, there's
Like they're a
various
little too
people.
silly to put on.
I am notoriously not fun, I guess. I consider Shoko Nakajima, which I guess would be a little silly in that, she wrestles with the tail and calls herself a kaiju, but I think she's actually a fantastic wrestler. On my like preparation list, I had five categories I worked with, which is the people I voted for, the people I've watched a lot, which is the people I voted for, people I may not have watched enough, Chris Benoit, because that's a loaded
I'm
evaluation.
just low on Benoit in general. People, I didn't include him on my list, and people asked, the obvious, which is like, oh, is it because, of what he did? And it's just like, I just have never connected with Benoit the way most people seem to.
I mean, he really was special at his time. I will say that
I'll say,
he.
yeah, when we were talking about like, oh, in the heavyweight division, who like when we were talking about Finlay and Regal, like who was in WCW was actually giving you like high quality work. Obviously,
Yeah,
Benoit is the guy.
yeah. I think it's such a loaded thing to consider. Like, what if he didn't commit murder and then suicide? But let's talk about how he was as a wrestler. It just feels so absurd. But like, I think there's a chance I might have voted for him if he hadn't have been, a fucking monster. Um,
I think someone posted their list, and someone's like, you have four murderers on here, right?
yeah.
It was like Jim
Oh, this
Beeks,
stuff.
Chris Benoit, Invader, um,
Gagne. I mean, Gagne, I
Yeah,
kind of
Gagne
don't
is not
think.
really a murderer though.
Yeah, I mean that's a sad situation.
Yeah, it's as sad. It's almost as sad for him and his family as it was for the victim. For people to know, Greg Gagne, while he had dementia, like pushed another resident in his uh living facility like over, and the guy like cracked his head and for Gagne. And so like, but like no charges were ever pressed.
Yeah, it's because it was a tragic situation.
Yeah, couldn't sneak. They couldn't sneak like Jimmy Snuka on there or anything.
Um, yeah, what's the 2016 list? I don't know. I need to pull that up. And see like what the results were and
For me, there were people that like I wanted to put on there, but I just like didn't see enough of their career
I
to
have a lot of
justify
names
it.
like that. Like I think
Like,
Virus is really cool from what I've seen, but
yeah.
also I've seen like either old man Virus like 5 times a year when his match gets buzz or
Mhm.
like
I thought about putting Conan on here. I don't think Conan's like a great wrestler, like bell to
Conan.
bell.
Wow,
Conan.
okay.
But like Conan's charisma at his peak in AAA, he was just like I think a lot of people don't understand like how over and how big of a drawing card he was. He was arguably the biggest dress wrestling star in the world from an attendance perspective in the mid 90s. Like,
Yeah. No,
and so,
I mean, Vampiro is very similar in that sense
yeah.
because he did really well in
But I
Mexico
was
and
like,
then
you know what? I don't really, and I think Conan's a better wrestler than Piro by like a wide margin. But
probably, yeah.
like, but I was like, like, can I really justify that? Like, if someone's like, oh, Jesse named 5 great Conan matches, I'd be like, let me think for a second. Like, and so I'm like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, I really only know Conan from his WCW period, which is he was fine. I don't think he was great or
Yeah, he's not
anything,
like
but
he wasn't like one of the most exciting. But it's hard to say with those guys in WCW.
yeah.
Like, and it's so absurd that Conan was like the biggest star in Mexico, and he's also at the same time like just like like working like second from the top or whatever.
Yeah. Or,
Uh,
had the US title run at least for a while, but I mean they still it was yet another example of an American company bringing in a Mexican star and being like, I don't know what to do here.
I mean, that was all. I mean, the 90s is really an incredible time for that because if you actually go back and read, like, if you weren't aware at the time, like, especially when WWF is bringing in, like, all, like, the AAA guys
Yeah.
later, and it's like, they're just kind of tossing them into the Royal Rumble with, like, no real, like, I think it's the 97 Royal Rumble that has a bunch of them, and it's like, and here's Canek. And I was like, Canek is one of the biggest wrestling stars in the history of Mexico, and he's just, like, number 19 coming out the 97 Royal Rumble.
Yeah. It's kind of like when that period when they had the match where they had 18 heels bury the Undertaker in the coffin and like Tenryu was there, if I
Yeah, well, they
recall
had the
correctly.
partnership with Super World
Yeah.
Sport. Um, at the time. And so like yeah, they have those matches, like those Tenryu Hogan tag team matches in Japan that were on they used to be on the network. Which is definitely where I watched them. Um,
Legitimately. Um yeah, I mean, looking at the list, like there's no way that, like 2016 as I scroll off the page.
who was number one? It says go through the top 10 real quick in
Okay, sure.
2016.
Regal, by the way, was 21st in
Yeah.
2016, and like, I'm assuming from the influx of voters that there's no way that's going to happen again. But
He might be higher, who knows?
man, I imagine he'll finish in the top 100. Could maybe hit like the low part of the top 50, but I think that'll probably be it. But I guess we'll see. All right, number one was Ric Flair. Number two, Terry Funk. Three was Stan Hansen. Four was Misawa. Five was listed as Daniel Bryan.
Tough.
Six is Liger. Seven is Rey Mysterio. Eight is Kendo Kobashi. Nine is Kawada. And 10 is Jerry Lawler.
That's a PWO list.
It is. I think it's a respectable list though. Like
Yeah, yeah, of
I'll
course.
joke about them like their love of Lawler sometimes, but
Yeah.
I also think like from the little bit I've watched from Lawler, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I see why you would be super, super high on him. He's, I think I'm obviously more experienced with him as like an announcer slash personality from the WWF stuff slash E stuff, but like, before he got like just so old that if they let him wrestle, he'd have a heart attack. Whoops. Like he was an extremely witty, like a very funny, entertaining presence outside of the ring. And the couple of matches they did have that I watched as a kid, like, it was like, oh, this guy, he's weird in WWF. He kind of sticks out, like he's very non WWF, but like he's a great heel. Um,
I had Liger at 37. Um, Obviously that means I think he's an incredible professional wrestler, which he is.
yeah,
I
I
wouldn't
don't.
have him ranked ahead of a lot, like a decent amount, like the absolute top heavyweights in the history of Japanese wrestling. Is what I'll say. I think he's like in terms of like fundamental bell to bell work, he's as good as almost anybody.
Mhm.
But his career is kind of not as important or big as maybe some people think because he was a junior, based for
I
almost the
think
entire entirety of it.
I think he's tremendously important as far as like a style, as
Yeah,
a
yeah,
trendsetter for style work. I
yeah.
think people really overlook like how quickly he kind of stopped mattering in New Japan.
Yeah, it's like
And granted,
he's like a 90s wrestler.
yeah,
Like,
like he
yeah,
freelance and like not the whole '90s either.
yeah.
Like he kind of got cycled out, if I recall from what I've read, like late in the '90s, like maybe as early as '98, maybe.
Hmm.
I'd have to go back and look. But like he was not like top of the junior division the entire time. Um, and I think that's a great example going back in the conversation a bit of looking at like someone that their highs when you go back and look at people historically are far outweigh their negatives unless like the negatives are just so awful that they're
Well,
disastrous.
he has he's very memorable because
He is.
he has exposure in America.
Yes.
Um, he had like his name and his outfit and everything like that. Like people are gonna who watch him in WCW are gonna remember him.
Hmm.
And I think
First
in
match in WCW too, right? Or Nitro, I should say,
yeah
on Nitro.
in I would say the same thing for Kiji Muto. For people that maybe haven't watched a ton of Puro but are big wrestling fans, those are guys that they might attach themselves to because they had a lot of American exposure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
with
think there's a bit of that with Muto as well.
yeah,
No, I didn't vote for Muto just because I haven't
I
seen
don't
him
really
enough,
like
so
Muto's
to
work that
feel.
much, to be honest. Like he's obviously at certain points, especially at younger periods in his career, an excellent pro wrestler, and he
Hmm.
got very smart as he got older, understanding his limitations. But like I can't sit here and be like, oh, I love all these Kiji Muto matches because I really
Yeah.
don't.
See, I can't speak to him, so I did not feel comfortable voting for him. There was, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people like that. Shinya Hashimoto, as I scroll past his name on the 2016 list. I think that
I had Shinya Hashimoto and Samoa Joe 39 and 40 respectively, and I swear to God that wasn't intentional, but I feel so
that
good
that would
about
be
it.
that would be one hell of a tag team
I just
match.
feel so good about it because Samoa Joe is
That's like the Predator handshake.
well, Joe worked with Hashimoto in Zero One in like 2003 or something like
True,
that.
true,
Yeah.
true.
So like and just they're like spiritual, the
Yeah.
same wrestler.
How do you think Rick Martel's going to do this time? He finished 43rd. I feel like that's a guy that's kind of been lost in the zeitgeist, but maybe I'm wrong.
I didn't vote for Rick Martel because I'm not super familiar with like his AWA work, which is probably
Yeah,
where a lot of his best stuff is happening.
yeah.
Um, it depends. Yeah, I think he's gonna fall because I think there's a lot of people. If you look at this, they actually released like when people started watching wrestling, and like more than half of the people who voted in this started watching wrestling after the year 2000, according to the poll results.
Hmm.
And I feel like that bodes not well for Rick Martel, to use an example.
Yeah. Um,
Only 15% of respondents said they started watching wrestling in the 80s.
yeah, well, I mean,
So,
that's a good point. I should have looked closer at that. But yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that changes things. Because, I mean, we have things like this voting group is going from a very PWO specific group to, including the tribal chief of Rhode Island.
yeah, we
So,
got to see the names of everyone who voted, and If you're by the very odd chance that you're listening, Tribal Chief Rhode Island, I would love to see your top 100.
I'd love to talk about wrestling with you and, be like, hey, if you want to check some stuff out, I'm happy to give you recommendations and, talk about wrestling with you. Did I tell you that I had a friend approach me a couple weeks ago and was like, hey, I've never watched wrestling before, but I want to. Can you show me some stuff? I think
No,
I
that's
mentioned.
really interesting. What did you decide to do? And I'm going to
Uh,
be critical of what you decided to
yeah,
show
sure.
me.
No,
Yeah.
no. Like it's a daunting thing though. Like someone's like, hey, I'm interested in this wrestling thing. Can you, like show me about, what it's about?
Mhm.
I And I thought, okay, so this is my thought process. I could, show her like insert, legendary match from the 90s or 80s or whatever here. I could show like a All Japan Misawa Kobashi match, or I could show Savage Steamboat, or just pick whatever, classic match
Yeah.
you love. But my thought was, well, these people aren't wrestling anymore. And in fact, maybe dead. So if they're interested in wrestling now, I should show them current stuff, or at least fairly recent stuff, of stuff that are still, people still
Yeah.
working
If
together.
someone's like, "Hey, I want to watch some basketball. I'm trying to get into it. What would you recommend for me to start watching?" Be like, "Yeah, here,
Here's some
I'm gonna
Dave Cohen's clips,
yeah.
Yeah, like it doesn't make any sense. So I tried to stick to the past 5 years. I expanded a little bit just as a to work one match in, but I showed Bailey Sasha from Brooklyn,
Hmm.
and then I showed the Hollywood ending. Because I was like, okay, so you're a woman. So, just so you know, women wrestling has really progressed in the US in the past decade. And here's like the match that kind
What
of
was this
kicks.
person's familiarity with wrestling?
Uh, there's a vlogger slash podcaster. And I'm not, I know of them, but I don't consume their content any. It's like, Super Sniper or something like that. Like they're a big name. I've seen their name in other contexts, but I guess they're prone to talking about like WWE once in a while. And they're like, oh, my friend was like, oh, this is really interesting. I'd like to check this out. And, we had a conversation before this night where I showed her several matches, where it was like, okay, so just so you know, I hate modern WWE for the most part. I think there's good performers there, but like I really don't like their style, blah, 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 blah. I like AEW, which is another promotion in the US that's pretty big. I like
Yes,
Japanese and
I explained it.
Lucha.
I every me and everyone listening to the show
Yeah,
explains
yeah,
has this conversation.
yeah, exactly. And they were like, okay, cool. They weren't like put off by it. I didn't show any promos. I just like if there was a video package before the match that I had pulled up, I would show it to him. So I showed him those. I showed her those two matches, and then I just made a comment of because she made the comment, oh, so like this is just like theater kids working out their energy. I'm like, yeah, you can make that argument, from the outside, sure. Though then I was just because I had watched the Goldberg Norton match the other day, I was like, although it used to be more of like legit athletes coming in and doing this as like as a job basically, and I showed the Goldberg Norton match, which she got a kick out of, and then she asked for at some point she was like, okay, so I've seen great matches in front of, people that are really into it. What's a great, show me a great match in front of a crowd that is not into it. And so as an older person, the classic example I have for that is the Hog Wild Benoit Malenko match that like got praised by everyone, but it was in front of a bunch of bikers that didn't care about two small guys grappling. And I played a few minutes of that, and she's like, "Oh, okay, so that's what that's like. I get it."
I need
And
to
then
watch more of that.
yeah, yeah. It's just like curiosity sated. And so I played Walter and Ilya from Takeover 36, and then she said to me, "Okay, so I've heard Japanese wrestling is really good." And I was like, "Okay." So I played Sari versus Siri from last year, and that was the list of matches I played. And she really enjoyed them. She reacted to everything. She really liked the physicality of it. Was very impressed by the performances, and she's like, "Yeah, I'd love to watch more." Um, I didn't need any video packages to explain who these people were to her.
What
Um,
about lower third chirons?
no, no, Do you say chirons or chirons? I've always said chirons, but I don't
Nah,
actually
don't
know.
ask me. Don't ask me how to say
Okay, cool.
things
Fair enough.
correctly.
Fair enough. But no, there's no like I wish that, if only I had some tweets from people that were like, this match is good, then maybe I would understand it. Like, no, there's nothing like that. And it kind of was like a granted sample size of one, but it was like a deconstruction of like every, oh, you gotta, you have to win over the casual fan, you have to, blah 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 blah. It's kind of, I've already known this, but like the whole like you have to appeal to casual fans, and to do that, you must do exactly what I think you should do. It's just like a real straw man argument when it
Yeah,
comes
it
to,
always is.
yeah, yeah,
To tie it full circle, PW Loss once wrote that people talk about the casual fan as if they talk about the Midwestern
yeah.
factory worker
It's
in
very, that's a
politics.
very good
Like
point. Yeah,
we need to build a program that appeals to them, and whatever appeals to them is also kind of what appeals to my own personal sensibilities.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
like you could win. You gotta have big guys and comedy, and if you show any real wrestling, you're gonna lose them instantly. But you may be able to win
yes,
them back with boobs, and
yes,
that's basically like the Vince Russo method. Um, yeah, I mean, I did the AEW fan survey, and I was able to get some response from people who had started watching wrestling in the past year. So like your friend had kind of various kind of limited exposure to pro wrestling.
yeah,
And what always stands out to me is kind of you never really know what's going to stand out to someone who's kind of watching wrestling for the first time. And like any preconceived notion you have about what is going to come across, like you might think we might be like, oh, like, Samoa Joe is so cool. Like, you must love Samoa Joe, right? And they'd be like, I don't know, he's
yeah,
just like some fat guy. And he'd be like, no,
yeah,
no,
yeah, exactly.
but then they might catch on to something like that you wouldn't think that they would expect. Would be interesting. And it's hard I think there's no definitive formula for what's going to appeal to
No, you
an
never
individual.
know.
Like, especially in the world of pro wrestling, especially because it's such a weird space. Especially if you're talking about adults, like
Mm,
some things are really gonna like we got I got the feedback from fans. I got some fans again, like the young first time. Actually, I shouldn't say young. I don't know how old any of these people are, but the first time viewers or whatever that were giving my feedback. So some of them were like, "Yeah, I didn't really like a lot of the violent, like some of the blood and violence. I think that was just a little too much." And some other people were like, "Oh my God, it was amazing. I saw
yeah.
Hangman put the syringe through Swerve Streak, and I was hooked." Like you literally don't like know what's gonna appeal. So anytime someone goes in like a lecture about this is what you can't do, you're gonna run off the casual fan, that is just like an immediate dismiss this person because
No, it's just complete nonsense.
yeah, it's
And there's been no like actual studies or of any value of this, like maybe there's been some market research by WWE at points, or WCW even when they were around, or AW or TNA, but like they just didn't do anything with it. Like
yeah,
there's
and I
infamous stories of both, WCW and WWE doing like market research and then being like, well, I don't care about this.
yeah, it
Like,
clashes with whatever they really think. So it's like,
yeah,
all right, now I don't have it. And since I can't use it to justify what I already was
exactly.
gonna do. And I think it can be um really like difficult to analyze pro wrestling when we don't really know any of that information. Because
Yeah.
so much of this is when we talk about business growth and what do you got to do to this and what do you got to do that. And I want to see this and I want to do that. I'll tell you right now, I hear a lot of discussion about, oh, pro wrestling's got, like you mentioned, your friend mentioned, like the theater kids and not enough real athletes and all stuff like that. It's like, man, I don't know. When I see people talk about like newer fans, they talk about how they like fucking the theater kids
Yeah.
and they
Like,
like
yeah,
certain stuff and they like it's never cross what you personally enjoy as a fan, which is fine to discuss with what needs to be done correct to grow the business because it's
yeah.
a lot of times they're going to be off.
Yeah. And like, look, I'm a work rate nerd, obviously. I mean, I do the spreadsheet nonsense and all that bullshit, but like, it's not the end all be all of what wrestling is. Like, I've made this mention, I've said this, had this exchange in the VOW Discord quite a while ago. And like, well, obviously, I said wrestling obviously can't just be like guys in black tights doing grappling. And one guy responded, well, I'd like that. And I'm like, that's just a complete like, cool, good for you. Like that would not help. It's obvious that like the pageantry of it is what's
Yeah.
important, and to some extent, and like, like I think we've had periods in AEW where long matches really did move the needle. I think we're past that. unfortunately.
Well, you need to have the right long match too.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just like roll out, I don't know, God bless them both, but Chuck Taylor versus Joey Janela for 45 minutes and watch the ratings,
Yeah, I
rise.
can't believe Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson wrestling for the first time ever in AEW, and Danielson's first AEW
Exactly.
match moved the needle. I can't believe. Why can't we just do that every week? Um, yeah, I mean and that's like to get back to this list, like at least like there are some guys in here who are, I think, I don't even say better entertainers than they are wrestlers, but there's elements of them that like I rank Steve Austin eighth. I really wanted to rank Steve Austin highly
Yeah.
because
Oh,
I
I'm a
and
90s kid, so like,
yeah, but I think as a wrestler, like bell to bell wrestler, Steve
Yeah.
Austin is pretty underrated.
No, he is. He very much is
Like, because he's
because
famous for drinking beers and giving people the stunner and the finger and driving
and he
around
got
various vehicles and
he got wrecked physically and
yeah. But
um
his intensity,
oh
his
yeah,
ability
very
to
unique.
fire up, his just he just had it as a pro wrestler. And you know what, he had it almost instantly from when he first
Yeah.
started.
No, like if you watch like that early WCW stuff, which I know isn't the very start of his career, but it's very shortly after. Like there's no like sign that he's. You're not looking at like Hook early in AEW or like Brian Pillman Jr. or whatever. Like insert project they had that didn't work out. Like he was just like, "Yep, I'm a wrestler and I'm really fucking good at this."
Well, you've heard the Mick Foley story about Steve Austin?
What he doesn't like crackers in his bed?
No. Well, I yes, I have heard that, but so and now granted, this could be a exaggerated pro wrestling story, which would be
Sure,
the first
yeah,
time, but it is from Mick Foley, who's at least a somewhat more reliable source than most
yeah,
wrestlers. But Mick Foley talks about he was working in WCCW at the time, in like the mid to late 80s,
hmm,
and he after the show they would do the wrestling school in Chris Adams, right? That's his name, Chris Adams,
yeah, yeah,
which was, running the wrestling school out of WCCW, and he would, bring his trainees and they do exercises in the ring, whatever. And McFoley said he was watching them do it, and he remember seeing all these people. He's like, man, these people are really bad. They're worse than me when I started, and I thought I was really bad. And then he's like, but there was one, like, big blonde kid who looked like he was pretty good,
yeah,
and that is Steve Austin.
yeah. I mean, you have the same thing with The Rock, who I voted for,
Oh yeah, The
because
Rock is in The Rock. Like I voted Steve Austin eighth and The Rock 54th, and you argue that The Rock has
yeah,
like some ways more longevity than Steve
eh,
Austin.
kind of,
Um, in a way,
I guess as like a super top star.
Steve Austin's career, Steve Austin's like career and consistency is kind of front loaded.
Yeah,
You'd be looking at like the mid '90s and like the Hollywood Blondes and that kind of stuff. Um, to help kind of boost his career. Because by the time like 2000 rolls around, like that's kind of it for Stone Cold. Not as like he's still really good, but he's kind of done as a consistent great wrestler,
yeah,
I guess. And plus, like the company devolves into like such like just constant run in. Everything is a storyline. Everything is bullshit kind of style.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Like
It'd be fascinating if he really stuck around for like more of that. Like WWF is like, oh, we're going to actually try to have good matches now.
yeah, like the
Period.
ruthless aggression
Yeah,
stuff. Um, but like he's an amazing pro wrestler,
yeah.
and
Oh,
he's
he's fantastic at so many things.
yeah, and I think I think people like real like ball knowers know
Hmm.
that,
Yeah,
but because he's so famous for like all the other stuff that he's overlooked as a great wrestler, but he really is like. I mean, I was watching some of his stuff recently because I wanted to rank him highly, so I was like, I'm gonna watch some stuff that he did. And just again, working in these, it's just such a weird era for wrestling,
hmm,
like that 90s WWF, where the main events like it's just like interference run in circus, but the
yeah,
crowd's so hot for everything, and the wrestlers themselves are still like at their peak, which is make a big difference than WCW. Or like
yeah.
WCW also has a lot of like the run-in bullshit finishes and stuff like that,
Oh,
but it's
they're
like
all washed
yeah,
basically.
it's all that's a very key
Like
point. They're
Piper with
all
one hip, and
yeah, like limping
like
down to the ring and stuff like that. There's not like a lot of
yeah,
explosive athleticism. WWF has a lot of the same, but it's like Austin and The Rock
Foley,
and
yeah.
Mick Foley and like The Undertaker and like it's
Bret
like these
Hart for a
guys.
while, Michaels,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like these guys that are really like still relatively at the top of their games.
yeah,
And it just in like the crowd is just, losing their mind. It's like this same booking formula would absolutely suck with like less charismatic wrestlers
yeah.
if
Like
they had
if
those
you're,
guys.
if for whatever reason, like the main event scene in WWF was like just pick some mid card guys, like you know, Farouk and Phineas Godwin and Val Venus and Godfather
Mabel.
and yeah Mabel, you'd be like, oh, that company sucked and that's why they died, because they didn't have and now those people, you mentioned the great workers were also great personalities and like really big personalities in a period where like big personalities were really needed. Um,
You mentioned something that I like. You mentioned like wrestling can't just be black tights, guys in black tights rolling around in the ring. And
yeah,
you mentioned like how you're a big work
obviously
rate.
Austin had the black tights,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, but
But
it's
you mentioned how you're a big work rate guy, and that's
yeah,
how I am too, of course, and most of the people listening to this probably are to a degree. And um, like the sports entertainment aspect of it is stuff that can largely be lost.
yeah,
Something Dave said once that I think about all the time because it's so true. He said the longer you watch wrestling, the more annoyed you get with like the bullshit tropes
yeah.
of like seeing, oh, this guy's gonna turn on this guy. Let's wait for the interference. Like, oh, here comes the ref bump. Like all of that kind of stuff. You just kind of want to go out and watch two guys wrestle, and they have
Hmm.
a match, and whoever is the better man wins. And that's like ideal pro wrestling to you because it basically cuts out all of the bullshit.
Yeah.
And
I-
I think that's really like interesting from a fan perspective, especially when we talk about like growing the new fans. What do fans expect? Like fans expect storylines and characters and interference at this point because that's what's been the you know thing that's been prevalent across wrestling for the last 30 years or so,
mhm.
longer. Um, but I don't know, like new fans gravitate towards like a very sports based presentation? I don't know.
I think they could if you gave like I think you'd still have to present personalities and have like
Yeah.
some kind of stories. But here's the thing is like this always drives me nuts is whenever, you hear the kind of very, like I've gave this, the people that are pro current WWE, for example, they use this
Hmm.
as like response number four on their soundboard, essentially, of responding to someone they disagree with of, well, what's the story? You gotta tell a story. Like, look, you got week 5 of the NFL season. The Jets are playing the Texans.
Nobody cares about that game, Fred. They only care about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we're like, and it's gonna get like the third highest rating on TV that
Yeah.
week and like dwarf anything that wrestling has ever done. And it's because, like there's no like to date myself, you know, David Carr was hit in the back by Daryl Revis with a chair. Like it's people are curious about who's going to win, but like it's all part of a larger story. And
David Carr was
it's
hit a lot.
he was hit. He might as well have been hit by some chairs, frankly, given
It
the way
ruined
that
his
O line
career. Like he got
ruined. Yeah,
he yeah,
he was great. And
he
then
got
they were like,
behind
"What
that.
if we just pulverize you?" And he was like, "Please don't." And they're like, "We're
Well,
gonna
yeah,
do
he
it."
was the expansion. He was the expansion era quarterback, number one pick for the expansion
Yeah.
era team, and they had no offensive line, and his career was shorthanded. And that was an era where you could like really hit the quarterback.
Yeah, yeah. I think that kind of happened with Tim Couch too to pull in the Lexington, Kentucky thing. I don't know if he would have been like an all-time great or anything, but he was like, "Hey, I'm here for the new Browns," and the new Browns were like, "We can't block anyone."
But like a guy taking like 60 sacks in like 2002 is different
Yeah,
than a guy taking 60 sacks in 2026. The sacks are
yeah,
a lot different. They're like five
exactly.
times as vicious.
Yeah, there was the old jacked up segment where they were like, "CTE, yeah, let's go."
Young Jesse fucking loved Jacked Up.
Oh, let's be clear. Jacked up ruled, but like if you give it any level of thought beyond like, damn, that guy, got blown up, if you're like, oh, what's the health ramifications of that? You're like, oh no.
It aired at like 8:55 on Monday Night Countdown, like right before
Yeah,
Monday Night Football would start. They would be like, "All right, we're
exactly.
gonna end up with Jacked Up," and they would be like, I don't know, it'd be like Willis McGahee, like not being able to stand up properly after a hit.
Yeah. And while like Mike Ditka or whoever's in the studio, like,
Tom
yeah,
Jackson. Yeah.
yeah. On that note, like you mentioned, some people enjoying and some people not enjoying the more violent aspects of AEW. I should, by all rights, be a safety police guy, given my medical training and everything. But like, well, I don't need guys getting hit on the head with a chair, like unprotected. Like you should, as a promotion, do stuff, be like, don't do that. And if you do that, you're going to get in trouble because it's really dumb and doesn't do anything. But like stuff that doesn't do lasting damage, like you brought up the syringe in the cheek spot. That may have been a little much for me, but like still, I found myself with AW. It was really the first time I ever watched like anything close to a death match at points, and being like, oh, I actually really like this. This rules.
Yeah, well, the syringe is more like I don't think anyone would really argue like that's gonna shorten Swerve's life.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's assuming it was a clean syringe. Um, it's just kind of gross. I'm not a
Yeah,
huge
yeah,
fan. Like I could take it or leave it. I don't really think it's like
yeah. That part did do.
Hangman drinking the blood. That's fucking rules.
No, that ruled. Now I hope to God that they did blood tests,
So this
to
so
make sure that no one had like
yeah.
HIV or hepatitis or whatever.
Um, yeah, like the syringe is just kind of like I think that's kind of stupid. That's kind of like the
Yeah, I'm
part of
not
death
big into
match
that.
I
I'm
don't
pointing
really
that out
like.
as like just a gross spot.
Well, people talk about like Darby, like the drowning spot.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that drowning guy, that's ridiculous, that's sick. And I'm like, that's like a super safe move. All Darby has to do is hold his breath.
Yeah, like that the panic about that was very curious to me
I love
because
that match. That was my match of the year
it
last year.
it just felt like really we got to find something to be upset about kind of stuff. Like I just did not think those complaints were sincere, and maybe they
Fred, it
were.
felt too real. It felt
You
too real for people to see that kind of level of violence in a
you
wrestling
really think
match.
that like Bryce Remsburg's going to be there and be like, "Well, they're killing him and I can't do anything. There's no rules." You know? Like next
Moxley,
like the next time they do a no light, a lights out match that like John Moxley's walking through the curtain with like napalm or
Fred,
like a
they worked it. They worked it. They convinced people
they did.
that Darby was really in physical trouble.
It's still real to me, damn it.
That's what, I was talking about Brandon Thurston about this. Brandon, of course, is a former wrestler slash wrestling trainer.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, safety and that kind of thing, and people watching certain moves and like, oh, that guy landed on his head, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, my number one is Mitsuharu Misawa, which should tell you where my interests lie.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, I watched Misawa versus Kobashi last night, 97. Misawa wins with just a stiff forearm at the end. It
Yeah.
fucking rolls. And it was kind of like, I'll watch this just to make myself feel better about putting Misawa number one, just a reminder of myself.
Yeah.
And those guys Misawa lands on his head a bunch. And
Hmm.
you see that now, and you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
probably not that good, but it's still pretty awesome. Um, but what Brandon Thurston was saying, which I think is really, really, really important, because you get all these people now that they'll see a spot or they'll see a thing and be like, that was so dangerous. Oh, the guy landed on his head. Oh, why would you do that? So dangerous. And what Brandon said is like pro wrestling is like making magic. It's
Hmm.
doing something that looks like it hurts, but it actually doesn't. And we're kind of screwing up the system if we're like looking at something like, wow, that looked like it really hurt, therefore it is
That's bad.
bad.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Now,
defeating the logic of pro wrestling, and like part of the charm of pro wrestling
it's the point.
is yeah, like good pro
I want to say
wrestlers.
like beyond just part of the charm, like it's the point is to make it look like people are getting hurt.
Yeah. And I think like Kenny said something along these lines too. Kenny Omega, he said like, look, like it's funny Kenny says Kenny's like one of the most athletic wrestlers of all time.
Yeah.
But he says like, I wouldn't tell Pac what to do because Pac's like a better athlete than me. And like, okay, that move that Will Ospreay took does look like Will landed right on his head, but like maybe he didn't land right on his head and it just looked that way and he was able to make it look like that way because he's an incredible athlete and an incredible pro wrestler.
Yeah.
Not to mention all the stuff about like these guys only work 30 matches a year and aren't all like, crushing pain pills to make the next town.
Yeah.
And they're all like, stretching and like doing like all sorts
They
of
actually take care of their health
yeah,
beyond like ordering a grilled chicken breast at a
like
Cracker Barrel or whatever.
yeah, like Darby, like probably, I don't know,
I
Darby's
do
probably not
worry
gonna
about Darby a little bit just because I think he kind of goes beyond that. But
yes, I
like, it's
agree.
also his decision at the same
But
time.
there's
So
just and
like,
there's a big difference between a guy wrestling 30 matches a year and the bumps he can take in those matches versus a guy that's
yeah,
wrestling 200 matches a year in a
and
shitty
like if
ring.
and also if you think about like the real awful injuries you've seen, like most of them came off of real basic shit. Like Sid broke his leg hopping off the second turnbuckle.
Yeah, you think of
Um,
freak accidents that happen in the ring. Like think
yeah,
about um some of the really bad stuff that we heard, like Pero Aguayo Jr., right? Just
yeah,
takes like a drop toe hold and just lands the wrong way on a
yeah,
rope.
exactly.
Um,
Misawa
Takamura,
was a back suplex, so I
yeah,
also think you can attribute some of that to the wear and tear
yeah,
of
and
those
that
head
you could say
roughs.
that,
But
yeah. Takayama doesn't like rotate properly off of like a botch sunset flip and
yeah,
finds himself paralyzed.
yeah.
Um, well, there was one relatively recently.
Well, I mean, Big E with the overhead suplex. I mean, just you know,
Yeah, actually, I remember talking about that with Brandon on this podcast, and Brandon said like that move is actually like just really dangerous to take. Like
yeah, I could
there's,
believe that
it's
because
just,
you're
but he even
going
more
completely
so
over your
than you
head.
would think. Like he just like I don't know how you can really do that move safely.
Mm,
Like it doesn't, in the context of wrestling, it doesn't really seem that like insanely extreme compared to what we see. But like, I don't know, there's something about it, especially when I mean, when you're 290 pounds,
yeah,
like that, and that's a big thing with Darby. Darby doesn't weigh a lot, so.
yeah, that helps too. Yeah, I
But Darby,
I, I think I think this kind
Darby
of points to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, Darby, like he did that drop kick on the fucking stairs
Oh God, yeah,
at
he did the Samoa Joe
Revolution,
thing, and like no one talked about it because he
or
also
was
did
it?
three other crazy things.
Yeah, was it Dynasty? I think it was a Dynasty
I
actually.
think it was Dynasty. Yeah,
And it's just like it's one thing to do like yeah, I'm gonna do like a crazy flip and land through a plate of glass off a ladder for Sting's final match. That's like a
yeah,
signature spot. Like yeah, that was really dangerous, but like it looked super cool. Like the drop kick on the stairs is just like that's real. Like why are you doing this?
yeah. Yeah, and Darby is very high in the list of wrestlers currently prone to doing that kind of stuff.
82 on my list, by the way, Darby Allin.
What's that? I'm sorry.
He's 82 on my
Oh,
list.
okay. Yeah, I have him on mine too somewhere, I think.
Like all-time great TV wrestler.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I have him because he's been doing it for seven
Yeah. And
years.
I don't want to say that is not a recency bias
Now
for
I,
me.
I worry about the glass stuff. I understand that a lot of the time it's like, sugar glass or whatever, but I think the sting spot was not, and I feel like sometimes, like you can't control glass and that worries me some, but I also understand it's worked a lot, so
What Phil Brooks and Fred have in
yeah,
common?
yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
true. I mean, like, look, don't quote Joe Lanza, you don't want to hand it to ISIL, but I think CM Punk does have a point. Mind you, we could have maybe presented that in a way that wasn't an attempt to destroy a company, but hey,
As I
you
said on my
know,
last podcast, he presented it in a way to get heat off of him
mhm.
for banning Hangman Page from appearing at a episode of Collision.
that what a that whole string was just like
I'm really glad we moved past it.
God.
Like the company.
As someone that was trying to cover it weekly, like it was just like, well, let's talk about Phil again, like just
Really
real like
stupid. Really
I
stupid.
God, I would have
And
given anything to like move on from that
yeah,
shit.
improperly handled in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And it is objectively very, very funny what has happened since.
Oh no, it was hilarious and like a real, if I did not have to do like whatever version of journalism I was doing, it wasn't really journalism, but just like documenting the stuff and trying to talk about it seriously and not just be like, dumb people are dumb again. Anyways,
The Young Bucks getting CM Punk to just self-immolate by like not doing anything, like refusing to engage with him.
yeah,
Because he's out there cutting these little shoot promos talking about the counterfeit bucks and like all this kind of stuff,
yeah,
and they not acknowledge him, just doing their own thing, and then he just
yeah,
eventually self-sabotages himself out of the company.
yeah.
Uh,
Truly astonishing, like just I'm not mad, don't put it in the
yeah,
newspaper, I'm mad kind of
and
behavior
then
from
just
Punk.
everything, the Saudi Arabia shows and just the
Yeah,
kind of suck up work he's had to do for WWE.
yeah, like just lots of ways to live your life. We all make decisions, I guess.
All right, Fred, anything you want to plug that we haven't got around to yet?
I've got the good and the bad of the Hungee. That's an AEW podcast. The name on that is not aging at all. Don't worry about it.
I do think about that sometimes. I was like, the catchphrase of a meme wrestler.
Yeah, like a 3 month gimmick. It started. I started using it for the column because it was a way for me to format it, right? Like, this is the stuff off this week's Dynamite that was really
Yeah.
good. Here's some stuff that wasn't that good, and here's a couple weird things. And then Tyler was like, "Oh, I want to do it, and then let's keep the name." And I'm like, "Okay." And then now in 2026, I'm like, I don't even know if people remember what it's referencing. Which is okay. That's a very me way of doing things. Is just like, remember that thing 8 years ago? No? Okay, cool. Uh, well, I'm referencing it anyway. Um, but I also have a Patreon that I'm trying to use more often. It's $3 a month. I write about wrestling. I'm currently trying to write about like 1997 promotions, or matches, and just try to document like the great wrestling from that period because I'm kind of curious about it. I remember some
Isn't
of the
Stu
US
Williams
stuff.
doing this exact same gimmick?
Is he doing the 97 thing?
Yes, he's doing it
Oh
on his
God.
site, StuWilliams.com.
Well, maybe we should
Or
just
Williams Watches Wrestling. He's right. He
God.
has As Good as It Gets, which he's reviewing every great match from 1997.
God
And he was the
bless it.
most recent guest on this podcast. So,
That's hilarious. I just picked a year at random. It was just like, oh, that's the
well,
year
that's a really big year for pro wrestling.
it is. Yeah, it was
I
big for
think,
me, so
yeah. Well, it's the transformative year in the wrestling industry across the world.
yeah.
Like you have a lot of stuff in Japan, a lot of stuff in Mexico, and you have a lot of stuff, between WCW and WWF. It's the peak
Yeah.
of WCW in a lot of ways, and
Well, I'm
WWF
embarrassed
kind of
now.
building up for 1997.
That's hilarious. But if you want to read probably the second best version of that's going on right now, you can go to Flagrant Wrestling on Patreon.
All right,
Or
Fred.
don't, that's fine too.
Now, thanks for joining the show, Fred.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for everyone who is all listeners out there. We'll talk to you again after a while.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragon Gate is how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragon Gate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.